Chapter 258. In the end, Emperor Zhaokong allowed Marquis Wu Un and He Yin to lead Fei Hong's Fuyue army to Zhechuan. Although there were many discussions in the court, they slowly calmed down. Firstly, it was because of the Xiao family, so they did not dare to say anything. Secondly, even if He Yin did not go, there were very few people in the court that could be used. It was better to let Marquis Wu Un, who had fought against the Yudo, lead the troops. Yin led the Yin family troops to Ji County first. Xiao Ju led the South Mansion troops deep into Yunzi. There was also the slightly older Hui general who led the troops in the Liang province guards to Bingjiang, where the battle situation was slightly better. He Yin led the Fuyue army to Zhechuan. Of the four of them, apart from General Hui, who was slightly older, the other three were quite young, especially He Yin. Emperor Zhaokong dared to give them the military power not because he wanted to gamble, but because he wanted to cultivate his own trusted subordinates, especially He Yin. If he used him well, he might become the next Fei Hong. After receiving the command seal, they quickly left the capital. He Yin asked Emperor Zhaokong that when she was in the Liang province guards, Wang Ba and the others followed her to Rundu and cooperated with her during the night attack on the enemy camp. He wanted to go to Zhechuan so that Wang Ba and the others could join the Fuyue army. Emperor Zhaokong agreed. After everything was settled, there were only 2 days left in Shuajing. Spring thunder rumbled, and it was almost time for Jingzhe. The willow trees had already sprouted new green buds. They hid by the river and dyed the river green. In the noodle shop opened by Elder Sun in the east of the city, a girl in a blue dress was scooping out the noodles from the iron pot. She was young and could only be considered delicate. When people talked to her, she was a bit shy. She was a quiet and shy girl. 2 young people walked in. The younger one smiled and said, 2 bowls of Yanshun noodles. He handed over some money. Sun Xiaolan hurriedly wiped her hands with a handkerchief before accepting the money. Please take a seat inside. It'll be ready soon. Xiaomai nodded and winked at her big brother. Shi Tu glared at her as a warning. The 2 of them found a table inside and sat down. Xiaomai asked Shi Tu, Big brother, we're going to war soon. This time, we're not going to the Liangzhou garrison. We're going to fight those Yudo for real. Since you like Sister Xiaolan, why didn't you tell her before you left? Shi Tu didn't say anything. If you don't say it, she's in Shuajing City. What if Master Sun arranged a marriage for her? Xiaomai looked at her elder brother. We've been in the Liang province guards for so long. Why have you become such a coward? Shi Tu shook his head and said in a low voice, I may not be able to come back alive from Zhechuan. There's no need to give her hope and waste her time. He looked at the busy girl in the blue dress and revealed a rare smile. If I come back alive, I'll tell her about my feelings. Xiaomai looked at Sun Xiaolan and then at Shi Tu. After a while, she sighed as if she had accepted her fate. All right, whatever you say, big brother. The noodles were quickly served. Sun Xiaolan smiled and said, Please enjoy. Then she quickly left. Shi Tu looked at them for a long time before withdrawing his gaze. A light rain gradually fell from the sky, washing the limestone tiles in front of the shop until they were sparkling clean. The noodle shop's girl went to clean up the empty bowls. When she arrived at the table, she saw a pot of peach blossoms in front of the 2 empty bowls. This pot of peach blossoms had bloomed early, and some of them hadn't fully bloomed yet. They were shallow and deep, with specks of crimson, like the red snow of spring. She was stunned for a moment, and the image of the taciturn, handsome youth surfaced in her mind. After a while, her cheeks flushed slightly. She picked up the pot of peach blossoms and carefully placed it in the room. The mountain was still the same as before, but the bandit stronghold looked a lot more dilapidated. The man with the scar on his face climbed up the last mound and stared blankly at the bandit stronghold in front of him. A child leading a cow by the entrance glanced at him and was immediately stunned. A moment later, he howled, Boss is back. Being escorted into the stronghold and being called boss by everyone made Wang Ba feel as if a lifetime had passed. After staying in the Liang province guard for a long time, he had learned to obey. As a lowly soldier, it was very uncomfortable to be surrounded by so many people and treated with so much love and respect. He coughed lightly and said, I came back today to tell you that in a day, I'll be leaving for Juchuan to fight the Udo. I also came to see how you guys are doing." Someone squeezed forward and said flatteringly, "After boss left, there weren't many people coming to this mountain. The harvest wasn't good, so everyone started farming. They even raised silkworms. Although it's not as good as when we were bandits, it's better in terms of stability. Second boss said that when summer comes, we'll dig a pond in the mountain to raise fish. In the future, we won't have to worry about food and daily necessities." Wang Ba felt very gratified, but also a bit sour. He put on a fake smile and said, "Looks like you guys are doing well without me." Second boss walked over. He was a cultured man who had read books. Back then, when his family was in decline, he had no choice but to become a bandit. However, he couldn't lift or carry anything. At first, Wang Ba hoped that he could come up with some good ideas. Later, he simply gave up and let him stay in the stronghold to teach the children how to read and write. Second boss said, Ba saw how fierce the soldiers were in suppressing the bandits and felt it wasn't safe to rob them again. That's why he went to the Liang Province Guards and joined the army. However, the outside world has been chaotic these past 2 years. Everyone's lives haven't been easy. Now that we're able to be self-sufficient, it's already very good. Our master is going to fight the Wutua people. Without master, how can we have a good life outside? We all miss you. If you want to come back one day, you'll still be our boss. Wang Ba felt a bit better. He snorted softly. At least you guys have a conscience. He took out a few ingots of silver from the bag he carried with him and lined them up one by one. "This is," someone asked cautiously. "I did a meritorious service in the barracks. It's a reward from the higher-ups." He waved his hand indifferently. "I'm eating and living in the barracks now. It's useless to keep it. You guys can take it. Buy whatever you want. Don't say that boss doesn't care about your lives." "This," second boss hesitated for a moment. "You exchanged this with your life. We don't dare to take it. I told you to take it, so take it. Stop talking nonsense." Wang Ba glared at him. "You dare to talk back?" Everyone looked at each other and did not dare to refute. The children at the side surrounded Wang Ba, and all of them pounced on him, shouting, "Boss, you're amazing. Boss is the best." Wang Ba was squeezed until only his head was sticking out. He said angrily, "Don't step on me. Get off." When the crowd saw the commotion, they lowered their heads and laughed softly. In the shabby thatch hut, there was a rare big pot of mutton stew on the table. The 11 or 12-year-old boy was at the age when he could eat a lot. His mouth was full of oil and his cheeks were bulging. Hong Shan said, "Eat slowly. No one will fight with you." "Brother," the child looked up and said vaguely, "Next time you come back, let's eat mutton stew again." Hong Shan laughed. "Okay." The old woman next to him shook her head in disapproval. "You listen to him. What if this child is spoiled? Ah Cheng is so obedient. How could he be spoiled?" Hong Shan smiled and touched his younger brother's head. He sighed, "Ah Cheng is much taller now than when I left. In a few years, he'll be able to take charge." In their family, there were only a pair of brothers and an old mother. Xiao Mai and her brother were about the same age, but his younger brother was only 12 years old. Hong Shan didn't have much ability in his life. He didn't expect to enter the Liang Province Guards and meet a group of powerful brothers. However, he was willing to place all his beautiful hopes on his younger brother, hoping that he could bring glory to his ancestors. Ah Cheng, he looked at the young boy who was happily eating a mutton leg. "When I first came to the barracks and met Marquis Wuan, she was even thinner than you. But later, she became the leader of the Liang Province Guards. Is she really that powerful? More powerful than brother?" Ah Cheng asked curiously. Hong Shan smiled. "She's much more powerful than me." He looked at the young boy in front of him. "She can eat as much as you. So Ah Cheng, you have to work hard when I'm not here. Maybe in the future, you can also become someone like Marquis Wuan." "Marquis Wuan is a woman. I'm a man. How can I be Marquis Wuan?" The young boy couldn't take it. I want to be someone like General Feng Yin." Hong Shan and the old woman looked at each other, then lowered their heads and smiled. Okay. You could be General Feng Yin." Hong Shan smiled. "Then after brother leaves, you have to focus on studying and practicing martial arts. Don't make mother angry, okay?" "I know." Ah Cheng patted his chest and promised, "Brother, Don't worry. I'll take good care of Mother. Ah Shan. The old woman looked to Hong Shan, her gaze gentle and worried. Swords have no eyes on the battlefield. You have to be careful. Hong Shan pushed a bowl of soup in front of the old woman. Don't worry, Mother. I'll take good care of myself. Capital Martial Arts School. Director Jiang was having a duel with the young master, Jiang Jiao. Both of them used long spears. Curator Jiang used the long spear to perfection back then, but now his son, Jiang Jiao, had already surpassed him. Just like his name, the long spear was like a flood dragon coming out of the sea. It was beautiful and ferocious. With a horizontal strike, the tip of the spear was already at Director Jiang's neck. As the red tassels trembled slightly, the crowd burst into cheers. Good. The young master is amazing. Director Jiang lost. He has to admit that he's old. Although he lost to his son, Director Jiang didn't get angry. Instead, he showed a proud expression. Looking at the tall and straight young man in front of him, he felt a great sense of relief. Back then, Jiang Jiao's fiancée committed suicide for love. Jiang Jiao immediately became a joke and couldn't recover from the setback. He locked himself in his room every day and refused to see anyone. His family and friends came to persuade him, but it was useless. Director Jiang only had this one son. He was angry and heartbroken, but there was nothing he could do. It just so happened that the Liangzhou guards were recruiting new soldiers. He wanted to train this kid's willpower, so he forced Jiang Jiao to join the army. He didn't expect that in less than 2 years, Jiang Jiao would become a new man. He was no longer as dispirited as before, and his spear skills gradually improved. If there was one thing that Director Jiang felt fortunate about in his life, it was that day he tore down the Liangzhou Guard's recruitment document and threw his stinky son into the army camp. He pretended to be reserved and said, "Your spear skills are quite exquisite." Jiang Jiao smiled and said, "It's because my friend taught me well. He had taught him his spear skills." Thinking about it, he sighed. Hian's spear skills were far above his own. If he wanted to catch up to her, he would need to put in a lot of effort. Gym Master Jiang walked into the room and took out a long stick wrapped in red cloth. It's for you," Director Jiang said. "Open it and take a look." Jiang Jiao opened it and peeled off the red cloth. Inside was a silver spear. This spear was more beautiful and sharper than the one he had brought to the Liangzhou guards. "I'm afraid that your original spear won't be enough for your trip to Jiuquan. Our martial arts center has never lacked good weapons. This spear suits your current spear skills better." Jiang Jiao casually swung the spear in his hand a few times. He found it to his liking and immediately said happily, "Thank you, Father. Since you've taken the martial arts center's good spear, don't disgrace our Jiang family's reputation." Director Jiang said in a low voice. After a moment of silence, he added, "Of course, you have to protect yourself. Remember, come back alive." Jiang Jiao smiled freely and put the spear behind his back. He said straightforwardly, "Of course." The drizzle was weak. The restaurant was next to the river. An old man in a straw raincoat was fishing. He was as strong as a black bear and held a large knife in his hand. He stroked the prayer beads on his chest and looked at the restaurant in front of him with an exceptionally gentle gaze. This place used to be his home. It was also a spring day like this back then. Their house was close to the river, so they could catch a lot of fish in this season. His brothers would throw the fish carelessly into the bamboo baskets. The girls would remove the scales, clean them up, and roast them until they were fragrant. His parents were still alive back then, and the courtyard was bustling with activity every day. The carefree days seemed endless, and he also seemed like he would never grow up. In the blink of an eye, many years had passed. Things remained the same, but people had changed. His original family was long gone. The house that used to be filled with memories had become a wine shop, and he was all alone. He didn't even have anyone to say goodbye to before he left. The woman selling wine enthusiastically called out, "Big brother, do you want a bowl of apricot wine?" Huang Xiong turned his head to look. After a while, he nodded and said, 3 bowls. "Okay," the woman replied with a smile. He placed the knife on the table and waited for the woman to bring 3 bowls of sweet wine. The wine was sweet and refreshing. It wasn't expensive, but it reminded him of his mother's osmanthus wine. Huang Xiong raised his head. Under the eaves outside the window, raindrops fell drop by drop, smashing a small hole in the ground. He looked and looked, then suddenly shook his head and smiled. Actually, it was nothing. Sitting here now was like sitting in his old home. This woman's care could be considered a mother's advice. The sound of the rain outside was like the noise of younger siblings. And this knife, it was a close friend that would accompany him on his journey. The fierce man raised his head and drank the 3 bowls of wine one by one. He put down the money in his hand, got up, and strode away. Only the rain falling under the eaves was neither fast nor slow. It was exceptionally long. Today, the atmosphere in the Lin family in the capital was strangely cold. Mrs. Lin used a handkerchief to wipe her tears. Looking at the person in front of her, she sobbed, "My son, why did you have to run to G County? Do you know that there are endless wars there? You don't know martial arts. If you ran into a Yudo, what would you do? Mother only has you as my darling. If something happened to you, what would mother do?" "That's enough." Lin Mu frowned and said, "What's the point of crying? What if the servants see you like this?" Mrs. Lin didn't give up and pointed her spear at Lin Mu. "You useless thing. Go tell the emperor to let her come back. Why don't you go in his place? You've already lived for so many years. My son is still young. Wu, he's so weak. How can he go to the battlefield?" Lin Shuanga, for the first time, he realized that when his mother cried, there were so many tears. "Mother, I asked the emperor myself. I wanted to go. Please don't blame father." Lin Shuanghe said, "This is a good time to make a contribution. Our Lin family can't only treat women. If I go and make a contribution, our Lin family will be famous in a way." "Who cares?" Mrs. Lin scolded. "Our family doesn't lack money." For the first time, Lin Shuanghe felt helpless when it came to women. He looked at his father. Lin Mu frowned slightly and asked, "Have you really thought it through? That's a battlefield." "Father, it's not like I haven't been to a battlefield before. Didn't I already run into a Yudo in Jiang? I was fine. You're worrying too much. My luck has always been good. Nothing will happen." But Mrs. Lin still wanted to say something, but someone's voice came from behind. "Shuanghe, come with me." It was Lin Qingtan. Lin Shuanghe finally found a chance to slip away. He hurriedly said, "Grandfather is calling for me." He quickly followed Lin Qingtan. When they reached the study, Lin Qingtan turned around and looked into Lin Shuanghe's eyes. He asked, "You insist on going to G County. Is it because of the plague?" Lin Shuanghe was stunned. He then smiled and said, "Grandfather is wise." Yudo had killed innocent people in G County. Corpses were piled up like mountains. When he heard that there was a plague, Lin Shuanghe volunteered to go there to deal with the plague. "Have you really thought it through? The battlefield isn't like the capital. It's a place where you can lose your life at any time," Lin Qingtan said. Everyone in the capital knew that the youngest son of the Lin family was quite talented. Unfortunately, the situation was absurd and he couldn't achieve great things. Perhaps even Lin Shuanghe's father, Lin Mu, thought so too. The Lin family's hope for this junior was that he wouldn't cause any trouble for the rest of his life and live a peaceful life. That was enough. "Grandfather." The young man who was always smiling showed a serious expression for the first time. "If it was a peaceful time, I wouldn't be wrong to specialize in women's medicine. But the situation is urgent and the Lin family is afraid of death. They don't deserve to practice medicine. This trip to G County is not only to treat the people who have been infected with the plague. The injured soldiers in the army also need to be treated by military doctors. Although the battlefield is dangerous, grandfather has taught me before. As a doctor, you must have the heart of a living person. You must not have a selfish heart. I am a young master of the Lin family. But first, I am a doctor." Lin Qingtan looked at Lin Shuanghe in front of him. His eyes flashed. After a long time, this old man revealed a gratified smile for the first time. "A doctor is benevolent. You already have a benevolent heart. This is very good. Go to G County," he said. "Dr. Lin, that is also your battlefield." Chapter 259. He and accompanied He Sui and he Yunsheng the day before she left. When he Yunsheng found out that she was going to Jiuquan, he was extremely agitated and scolded. I know you're skilled, but Yin, that's Jiuquan. In the past, whether it was in the Rundu or Jiang, at least you didn't fight alone. You've never led an army by yourself. So how could you fight against those Yudo? Those Yudo are cunning and cruel. As soon as they broke through Jiuquan, they started to massacre the city. You're a woman, if you were really captured. He Yunsheng shuddered. That would be hell that was more painful than death. He Yunsheng. He Sui shouted, speak properly. The young man shut his mouth, but his gaze towards He Yin was still filled with endless worry. No matter how much the new recruits of the Liangzhou guards worshipped He Yin and told him that He Yin was omnipotent, in the hearts of the He family's father and son, He Yin was always the weak little girl who clamored to buy new clothes and lipstick. When a delicate plant was moved into the wild, it was already fortunate that it could survive after being exposed to the sun and wind. How could they let this plant fight and fight for its life? It was simply ridiculous. The imperial edict has already been issued, and the commander's seal is also in my hands, He Yin said helplessly. Yunsheng, calm down. I haven't gone to Jiuquan yet, and you've already arranged for my defeat. If this reaches the emperor's ears, our He family will be in big trouble. Yunsheng was dumbfounded by her words. After a while, he said, isn't it all because you're trying to be brave? A real man, He Yin teased him. The country is in danger, and it needs people. How can you only think about yourself? The teachers in your academy usually don't teach you like this, right? I don't care so much, the young man gritted his teeth and said, I only care about my family. Besides, if you let me go in your place, I'll go without saying anything. What's wrong with the imperial court? There are so many men, yet they let a woman charge at the front. He Yin smiled. Yunsheng, what are you talking about? Wasn't General Fei Hong, whom you admired in the past, also a woman? She patted the young man's shoulder. I didn't think too much about it, and I didn't think that I should hide behind just because I'm a woman. But because I thought I could go to war, I went. This has nothing to do with men or women. Yin Yin. He Sui looked at her. His eyes were a little red, but he still had a look generous and carefree. Well said. Father thinks so too. You're a child with a mind of your own. Since you took the initiative to go to Jiuquan, you must have a plan in mind. Father won't stop you. Don't listen to Yunsheng's nonsense. Father believes that you can definitely beat those Yudo. As he spoke, he began to choke with sobs. If He Sui wasn't too old and didn't have much talent, He Sui would have picked up his sword and rushed to the battlefield with He Yin. It would be a lie to say that he was relieved. He only had this one daughter, and he raised her like a treasure. Previously, He Yin had secretly gone to the Liangzhou guards, which made him worried for a long time. Now that they were going to face those Yudo with real swords and spears, how could he be relaxed? However, if this was the path that He Yin had decided to take, as her father, the only thing he could do was to help her. Father has wondered before whether our He family would have a general in the future. But I always thought it would be Yunsheng. I didn't expect it to be Yin Yin. He looked at the girl in front of him with emotion. Who would have thought that the arrogant and unrestrained girl who always clamored to buy new rouge would now become a heroine who led an army and personally went to the battlefield to fight against the enemy? He felt proud and sad at the same time. He was proud that He Sui's daughter was so outstanding that no man in the world could compare to her. He was sad because when a girl went to the battlefield, what she had to face was cruelty and darkness that no other girl had ever faced. However, if she wanted to be an eagle in the sky, then she should be allowed to fly in the sky and not be a kite with a string in her hand. She had her own world, even if that world was far away that he, as her father, couldn't touch. Father believes that your mother will definitely protect you from the heavens, He Sui said. He Yin looked at He Sui. He Sui, this father, was tolerant and magnanimous. Even now, he was completely thinking of her. Even if his heart ached unbearably, he would never show it, and would never pretend to be a tool to tie down his daughter. How fortunate was she that they were her family. Father, don't worry. He Yin held He Sui's hand. His father's hand was broad and rough, and his fingertips were thick with calluses from years of hard work. I'll be back soon after I defeat those Yudo. She paused after each word, as if she was making a promise. I'll definitely be back. The day before they left, Yin and Xiao Ju went out in the evening and sat in the carriage to Feng Lilu. Lin Shuanghe had booked the entire Feng Lilu today and invited a few friends to see them off. He was a spendthrift, and this time he was going to follow them to G County. He didn't know when he would be able to squander again. When they arrived at Feng Lilu, the waiter downstairs led them upstairs. When they went upstairs, only Lin Shuanghe was there. The table was filled with food and wine, and in the middle of the table was a copper pot. In the pot, mutton was boiling, and the aroma assailed their nostrils. Lin Shuanghe was talking to the beautiful zither player. They didn't know what he said, but the girl kept laughing. Brother Lin. Yin called out to him. Lin Shuanghe turned his head and saw Yin. His eyes lit up, and he walked over and complained, "Why did you guys come so late? I've been here for a while, and I thought you guys wouldn't be coming today." Yin looked around. Just the three of us. Just the three of them, and they ordered such a big table. Lin Shuanghe was really a prodigal son. How could that be? I called Yin Nongguang and his wife to come over as well. In any case, we're leaving together tomorrow. Today, I'll treat it as a farewell for everyone, and also for myself. However, Lin Shuanghe waved his fan. Yin Nongguang, why are you so late? Could it be that you know you're going to the battlefield tomorrow, so you hid at home and cried today? Lin Shuanghe, who are you scolding? Who's hiding at home and crying? As they were talking, someone's voice came from outside. They turned their heads and saw Yin. He's supporting Xia Qingxiu as they walked in. He glared at Lin Shuanghe. Who's the coward here? Didn't you invite us here today to build a good relationship with me, so that I can protect you when we get to G County, so that you won't be killed by those Yudo? He sneered. Don't think I can't tell. Yin noticed that Xia Qingxiu was being supported by Yin He. He asked with concern, Miss Qingxiu, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Although she should be calling Xia Qingxiu Madam Yin, Yin still preferred to call her Miss Qingxiu. Xia Qingxiu was gentle and patient. It was hard to imagine how she ended up as husband and wife with Yin He, who had such a bad temper. Xia Qingxiu was a little embarrassed. He was about to speak when Yin He interrupted. He wanted to show off, but he didn't want to be too direct. He pretended to be calm and said, It's nothing. It's just that she's pregnant now, so she should be more careful. Pregnant? Yin was stunned. Lin Shuanghe said excitedly, Madam, Yin is pregnant? Come. Let me take a look. He reached out to grab Xia Qingxiu's hand. Yin He slapped his hand away and stood in front of Xia Qingxiu. He said angrily, What are you doing? I'm taking Madam Yan's pulse, Lin Shuanghe said. I'm the white cloth divine physician, and I specialize in treating women. Let me see how Madam Yan's fetus is. Get lost. Yin He kicked him. I've already seen the imperial physician in the palace. She's doing very well. You don't have to worry about her. Madam Yin, look at him. Lin Shuanghe held his fan tightly and said in a low voice, You have to take care of him. Xia Qingxiu smiled and shook his head. Yin He's gaze fell on Yin. Yin was puzzled. He looked at Xiao Ju, who was sitting at the table, and suddenly said proudly, Xiao Huaijin, I'm going to be a father. I heard that, Xiao Ju replied coldly. I'm going to be a father before you. Yin He emphasized, I'm going to be a father before you. Yin He must have been a gamer in his previous life. What was there to compare? Furthermore, she and Xiao Ju had only been married for a short time. Yin He had been married for a long time. How could they be compared? The competition was simply too unfair. Yin was thinking when Xiao Ju suddenly looked up and glanced at him. Yin? The next moment, second young master Xiao said slowly, Who told you that you're going to be a father before me? Yin He's smile froze. What do you mean? Your son isn't even born yet. My daughter can already recite books. He stared at the teacup in his hand and smiled slightly. Lin Shuanghe spat out a mouthful of tea. Yin, was Xiao Ju talking about the time when she was drunk and asked Xiao Ju to recite a book to him when they were in the Liang Province Guards? Lin Shuanghe covered his face with his fan and said, Yes. Huaijin is going to be a father before you. I can testify to this. It's true. My daughter is so obedient. She can recite everything. How is that possible? And he panicked when he heard this. He rushed forward and questioned. She can even recite books? Your illegitimate daughter? Xiao Huaijin, you actually have an illegitimate daughter. When did this happen? Wow. Everyone says that you're arrogant and look down on everyone. I didn't expect you to be such a despicable and shameless person. And you? He looked at He Yin with disappointment and scolded. You look like a hero who kills enemies on the battlefield. How can you tolerate this? Why didn't you use a knife to chop off this bastard's head? He Yin, are you afraid that the Xiao family will oppress you? And his eyes narrowed and waved his hand. I'll support you. Tomorrow we'll divorce. Xiao Ju frowned slightly. Yin Nangguang, he said calmly, I don't want to fight today. Who's afraid of you? And he rolled up his sleeves eagerly when he heard this. Bring it on. Nan Guang, Xia Chengxiu shook his head disapprovingly and said softly, Young Master Lin is treating us today. How can we fight? Besides, Military Governor Xiao was joking with you. Why do you take it seriously? When Xia Chengxiu said this, Yin he immediately became listless and said, Okay, the mutton is cooked. Let's sit down and eat. Lin Shuanghe asked them to sit down. When they sat down, he nudged Xiao Ju with his arm and said softly, Huaijin, you're really good. Xiao Ju couldn't be bothered with him. Lin Shuanghe treated the Lin family's money like water. He always ordered the most expensive dishes. A table of dishes cost a table of silver. However, you get what you pay for. Feng Lu restaurant's dishes were the best in the capital. He Yin originally thought that even though Yin he was henpecked, he was still a general and would be careless. He didn't expect Yin he to be able to impress him this time. Xia Chengxiu remembered what he could eat and what he couldn't drink better than anyone else. He Yin guessed that the servants in the palace who served the imperial concubines were probably at this level. As he served Xia Chengxiu, he said, Hey, do you guys know Yang Mingji? When Xiao Ju heard this name, she didn't react. Instead, Lin Shuanghe paused and asked, What's wrong? It wasn't like that before. Yin he lowered his voice. Guang Yin agreed to open a market into Wei for the Yudo. As the governor of Jinling, Yang Mingji opposed it and almost lost his position. I don't know what happened, but I heard that the Yang family had a falling out with him because of this. He Yin glanced at Xiao Ju and asked, What happened after that? After the emperor ascended the throne, he appreciated his actions. He also saw that when he was in Jinling, he was clean and had outstanding achievements. He wanted to transfer him back to Shuajing, but he was rejected by Yang Mingji. Don't look at me. I don't know why he refused. Yin he shrugged. Even though he is in Jinling now, I think that the emperor admires him. He will return to Shuajing sooner or later. The Yang family must be regretting it now. Why didn't I see that old man Yang was this kind of person? No one answered him at the table. What happened to you guys before? And he was very curious about Yang Mingji. He asked Xiao Ju, what kind of hatred can be so far away? How many years have passed, and you still remember it? Xiao Huaijin, he said, as a man, you should be magnanimous. What kind of man are you if you are so petty? Shut up, Lin Shuanghe rolled his eyes at him. I think you are the most petty person at this table. I didn't part ways with my close friend. Forget it, Lin Shuanghe said disdainfully. Do you have a close friend? Lin Shuanghe. He picked up a piece of radish and put it in Xiao Ju's bowl. When second young master Xiao was not in the military camp, as long as he ate outside, he would eat vegetables. He probably minded that others did not clean it well. He felt that he was too particular, but forget it, everyone had their own habits. She interrupted Yin He and tried to change the topic. Miss Chengxiu, do you want the child in your belly to be a young master or a young lady? Xia Chengxiu smiled. She couldn't be considered an outstanding beauty, but she had her own gentle charm. She said, young master or young miss, I like them both. Yin asked Yin He, what about generals Yin? I don't care if it is a young master or young lady. As long as it is my wife's child, of course I like it. Once Yin He mentioned his unborn child. His tail was about to reach the sky. He said proudly, if it is someone else's child, whether it is a young master or a young lady, I will hate it. This person was really arrogant. He did not know how other people's children had offended him. Lin Shuanghe also asked Xia Qingxiu, sister-in-law, have you named the child? This. Xia Qingxiu showed a troubled expression. I have my own ideas. Yin he interrupted. If it is a daughter, then she will be called Yin Muxia. Yin, is this the meaning of admiring Miss Qingxiu? I couldn't tell that you didn't know anything about poetry, but now you are quite smart. Yin he said proudly, how is it? Do you think that I am good at naming? Ian did not know how to respond, and he probably did not realize that although it was a good thing that he loved his wife, every time he proudly showed off his love for his wife, he seemed a little no, he was exceptionally stupid. You are really good at naming. Ian was very supportive. Then what if it is a boy? And he showed a lack of interest. Then he will be called General Yin Liang. I hope that when he grows up, he can also be a general as outstanding as his father. What kind of person is this? Lin Shuanghe mocked. Even at this time, he still doesn't forget to put gold on his face. Lin Shuanghe, Yin he said angrily, when you go to Ji County, do you still want to live? Yes, yes. Lin Shuanghe cupped his hands. I hope that General's Yin will save this young master's worthless life when the time comes. Only then was Yin he satisfied. Yin bit into a lamb leg and asked, however, Brother Lin, you going to Ji County is really out of my expectations. I thought that even if you were to go to the battlefield, you would go to Yunzi or Jiuquan. If you went to Yunzi, he could go with Xiao Ju. If he went to Jiuquan, he would be with her. It was not that he was boasting. Speaking of which, Lin Shuanghe's relationship with her, or Xiao Ju, was obviously better than Yin. However, she later understood that there was a plague in Ji County right now. If Lin Shuanghe wanted to go to Ji County, it must be because of the plague. Mimi, Lin Shuanghe had called her sister-in-law a few times before, but in the end, he felt awkward and called her Mimi in the end. He said, I know the abilities of you and Huaijin. With me or without me, there's not much difference. General's Yin is different. If I am not present, what if he gets injured and there is no godly doctor to treat him? What will happen if the war is delayed? His relations with people are very bad. If those military doctors take the opportunity to poison his medicine, TSK, 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 how tragic. And he was furious. Lin Shuanghe, I think that nothing good comes out of your filthy mouth. How could I get injured? This is ridiculous. Let me tell you, in the future, don't beg me to save you. Get lost. Ian knew that Lin Shuanghe was just spouting nonsense. He looked like a playboy, but in fact, he had a lot of ideas in his mind. How could a man raised by the Shua Jing's Lin family be afraid of death? Ian raised the cup in her hand. Because they had to set off tomorrow, she did not dare to get drunk today. She only switched to sweet rice wine. She said, Miss Yu Xian gave us a jar of Bifong wine earlier, but let's not drink it today. After we defeat those Yudo, we will come to Feng Lulu and ask Brother Lin to prepare a table of good dishes for us. Then, we will not waste the wine. For now, let's just make do with this rice wine. Let's hope that we can defeat the enemy and win every battle. Let's hope that we can return victorious. What do you think? Good. Lin Shuanghe was the first to clap. Well said. Xiao Ju glanced at her and smiled. The 5 cups collided in the air and made a crisp sound. It was like the sound of weapons clashing. It was also like the sound of a horn announcing victory. Cheers! Chapter 260. All good things must come to an end. It was late at night. Feng Lulu was only left with a mess of cups and plates. The young people had already dispersed, fighting for the last bit of warmth. In the room, a beautiful woman was folding clothes one by one and putting them into a bundle. A man who walked into the room saw her and snatched it away. Qingxiu, I told you not to do these things. And he pulled her to sit in front of the couch. You are pregnant now. You should be more careful. What if you get tired? Xia Qingxiu said, I'm only pregnant. Why do you have to make it sound so serious? You're pregnant and you're not serious? And he made a fuss about nothing. Anyway, there are servants to do these chores. You just have to take care of yourself. Xia Qingxiu was silent. I just remembered that you did not have time to wear 2 sets of new clothes. This time, I will bring them for you. Yin he rarely returned to the capital these 2 years. Sometimes, He would leave the capital before he could wear the new clothes that Xia Chengxiu prepared for him. I'm going to war. There's no need to dress so nicely. Yinny said without thinking. There's no need to bring so much. Xia Chengxiu was silent. Her silence made Yinny panic. Every time before he went to war, he was most afraid of Xia Chengxiu's silence. Xia Chengxiu's daughter was gentle and strong. When he was young, he had seen his family members cry for him to stay when he went to war. Even his own mother was like this. However, Xia Chengxiu was never like this. At most, he would be silent like this. However, this silence made him feel even more guilty and pity. As a general, when the country was in trouble, he would not shirk his duty. He had lived until now and was worthy of being the ruler of heaven and earth. The only thing he owed was his wife and children. And he hesitated for a moment. He pulled Xia Chengxiu into his arms and sighed softly. Chengxiu, I have wronged you. Xia Chengxiu was stunned for a moment before she smiled. What grievance is this? You went to Ji County in order to protect the Great Ways territory. Wasn't I able to live peacefully in the capital also because of your protection? But Yinny frowned. When you were pregnant, I couldn't be by your side. Being able to have a child with Xia Chengxiu was something to be happy about, but it also came with regret, disappointment, worry, and guilt. Since I married you, of course, I already expected this day to come. Xia Chengxiu smiled. The situation is critical. Even if you're not in Shuajing, the little guy will understand. Then he looked at Xia Chengxiu's lower abdomen and covered it with his palm. He murmured, I don't know if it's the young master or the young lady. When I heard what you said from the restaurant today, I thought you didn't care. Xia Chengxiu chuckled. I don't care whether it's a boy or a girl. After all, it's my blood. Xiao Zhu noticed Yan's gaze and asked, What are you looking at? I'm thinking. Yan didn't hide anything. Your face is indeed worthy of the title Jade Face Commander. For a general to look like this, it was an insult to the other generals. Xiao Zhu's mouth twitched. It was very strange. He didn't like others to talk about his appearance. Judging a person by appearance was a superficial thing. However, whenever Yan directly praised his appearance, he didn't feel disgusted. In fact, he even enjoyed it. Sometimes, Xiao Zhu would reflect on himself and wonder if he had become superficial. That was why he was happy. Yan waited for him to finish wiping the sword. Then, he put the sword back in his scabbard and stood up to hang the two swords on the wall. As soon as Xiao Zhu finished hanging the swords, he was hugged from behind. Yan loved hugging him like this. It was like a child clinging to an adult. Perhaps it was because she was too short, or perhaps it wasn't because Yan was short, but because Xiao Zhu was too tall. In any case, every time she hugged Xiao Zhu's waist, her expression would be filled with pure happiness. This happiness would make people feel warm in their hearts. Heroine, the young man stood motionless. His voice carried a hint of mockery. Are you going to strangle me to death? Her disapproving voice came from behind. I haven't even used my strength yet. Military Governor Xiao, why are you so weak? Then, she reached out and touched his waist. Xiao Zhu. Yan touched the sachet on his waist and pulled it over. She held it in her hand and said, Xiao Zhu, is this how you advertise my needlework? Xiao Zhu turned around and looked at the sachet in her hand. She raised her eyebrows slightly. That seems to be mine. Yan was speechless. She didn't notice it at first. However, when she left today, Lin Shuang has said to her, Sister what's with that ugly sachet on Huaijin? He's the second son of a Xiao family. It's really unsightly for him to wear such an ugly accessory. Since you're his wife, you should pay attention to it occasionally. Yan paid attention to it. It was fine if she didn't, but once she did, she felt both angry and amused. Previously, Bai Rongwei had given Xiao Zhu a protective talisman. The protective talisman was placed in a sachet. At that time, out of some secret thoughts, Yan had embroidered a moon in the sachet. To be honest, the moon was not very beautiful. However, it was still a token of her goodwill. Now, it seemed that Xiao Zhu had discovered the secret. However, Even if she discovered it, why did she flip the sachet upside down and show the embroidered side? Anyone who saw it would only think that it was an ugly sachet. You didn't tell them that I embroidered it, right? Ian asked nervously. It's so ugly. I definitely didn't embroider it. Xiaoju laughed. Oh, I only told them that it was my wife who embroidered it. Ian's heart turned to ashes. She returned the sachet to Xiaoju. It's fine. You've already embarrassed yourself. However, don't you think that it's ugly when you wear it? This was like the elegant Prince Lin Shuanghe holding an iron hoe as a decoration. Ugliness was secondary. The main thing was that it didn't match. Is it? Xiaoju fastened the sachet to the button of her outer garment. I think it's not bad. Ian thought to himself, could it be that being blind is contagious? He turned around and looked at Hien. When we arrived at Yunzi, when I saw it, it felt like I was looking at you. Hien, are you trying to say that I'm ugly? He was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed and said leisurely, your way of thinking is always different from ordinary people. Hien also laughed. How was she different from ordinary people? It was just that she didn't want to make the atmosphere sad. People were always especially vulnerable and sad when they were about to leave. However, she didn't want to. If she knew that her goal was in front of her and she knew where she was going, then she would take big steps forward and walk forward confidently. The so-called weakness was the other side of the armor. Xiaoju, can you promise me something? She asked. What is it? Jiuchuan and Yunzi are not in the same direction. When the war starts, it will take time for news to reach each other. I used to be alone and didn't have any worries. However, you and I are husband and wife now. I want you to promise me that if there's news, no matter what it is, you will do what you have to do. Don't affect the overall situation and don't stop. She looked at the man in front of her. Continue to walk forward. No one could guarantee the outcome of the war. This was the first time she was going to war with her sweetheart. A person couldn't be distracted. When a general was on the battlefield, all his energy could only be used on the battlefield in front of him and the enemy. Every time he was distracted, it was a big taboo. At that time, the so-called husband, son, father, these titles all had to be cast aside. On the battlefield, if it wasn't a soldier, then it was a general. That was all. Of course, she was the same. This sentence also applies to me, Hien said. No matter what I encounter, no matter what I hear, I will lead my troops forward. I won't retreat or stop for anything. The girl's eyes were bright and seemed to be a little apologetic. She hesitated for a moment. You might think that I'm very heartless. I promise you, Xiaoju interrupted her. Hien was stunned. Xiaoju said, you also have to promise me one thing. What is it? He leaned over slightly and gently kissed Hien's forehead. Come back alive. The early spring sun shone on the newly cut window flowers. The sun was cut into small beams of light that sprinkled on the ground in the courtyard. A tall imperial bodyguard walked in from outside with a bundle in his hand. They were about to leave the capital for war. The original imperial bodyguard should also return to the Nine Flags camp and follow them to Yunzi. A petite figure was sweeping the courtyard. Chi-Wu stood behind the girl. He hesitated for a moment, not knowing if he should call out to her. Logically speaking, he had stayed at the He family for a period of time. Although he didn't do much and did almost nothing to help Hien, Hien's personal maid, Qingmei, had a good relationship with him. At one point, Chi-Wu even thought that he had a pretty good relationship with Qingmei. After all, this was the first time in his life that he had been ordered around by a woman. Perhaps it was because of Qingmei's matter-of-fact attitude that even he was affected. After a long time, Chi-Wu also began to think that this was how it should be. However, after Hien married into a Shao family, Qingmei avoided him as soon as she saw him, as if he was the god of plague. Chi-Wu was very puzzled, but it wasn't good for him to drag a little girl to ask for an explanation. In addition, there were too many things that happened after that, so he didn't see Qingmei many times. However, after leaving today, he probably wouldn't see this little servant girl for a long time. Chi-Wu hesitated whether he should go forward to greet her as a farewell. Before he could decide, Qingmei turned her head. When she saw Chi-Wu, she was surprised and said, Imperial bodyguard, Chi-Wu. Oh, I'm leaving. Chi-Wu scratched his head. I just happened to pass by. After saying this, he didn't know what else to say and planned to turn and leave. Wait, Qingmei called out to him. She took a cloth bag from the stone table next to her and stuffed it into Chi-Wu's arms. You came at the right time. If you didn't come, I could only have young madam give it to you. What is this? Chi-Wu was surprised. Young madam said that Yunzi is close to the sea and is very humid. I made a pair of boots. The soles are a bit hard and waterproof. My craftsmanship isn't very good, so you'll have to make do with it. She emphasized, consider it a reward for helping me sweep the courtyard earlier. Boots? Chi-Wu lowered his head to look at the cloth bag in his arms. His mood was a bit strange. Qingmei saw that he was still standing there and said with her hands on her hips, You're still not leaving? Aren't you afraid that young master will order you to serve him if you're late? Chi-Wu finally regained his senses. He hesitated for a moment, then said, Many thanks. He turned and was about to leave. Qingmei called out to him again, Hey, is there anything else? Chi-Wu asked. She grabbed the broom next to her and turned to walk into the courtyard. As she walked, she said, Knives and arrows don't have eyes. You be careful. Chi-Wu looked at her back and coughed lightly. It seemed that he wanted to laugh, but he held it back. He stuffed the cloth bag into his arms and strode away. Outside the city gates, it was already crowded with commoners who came to watch the commotion. Their family members had already come to send them off. Besides Xiao Jing, Bai Ronwei grabbed He-Yan's hand and repeatedly reminded her to be careful. She then carefully placed a safety talisman in her hand and said, This was consecrated by the master of Yuhua Temple. He asked for a total of 2. One is for you, and the other is for Huaijin. She said, He, I know that you have a righteous heart, but you also have to protect yourself. He-Yan hung the safety talisman and the black jade at his waist together. He smiled and said, I know, eldest sister-in-law. Yin, don't worry and go to Juchuan. Father will wait for you at home. He Sui waved at her heroically. He wanted to put on a confident and magnanimous appearance, but his eyes unconsciously turned red. He-Yan's eyes also became a little wet. He-Yunsheng didn't say anything, but when He-Yan walked in front of him, he finally couldn't help but remind her, He-Yan, you better do what you said. I know. He-Yan hurriedly nodded. I will definitely come back alive. Don't worry. She patted He-Yunsheng's head again. While I'm not here, I'll leave the He family in your care. Yunsheng. He-Yunsheng said, Don't worry. These 3 words were spoken in a powerful and resonant manner. He-Yan couldn't describe what she was feeling. Every time she went to the battlefield in her previous life, she was always alone. Now that she had so many ties, she didn't feel restrained. Instead, she was filled with strength. He-Shining also came today. She hid in the crowd and was discovered by He-Yan. She hesitated for a moment, then stood out and handed the cloth bag in her hand to He-Yan. He-Shining said, You're a woman. It's inconvenient for you to do everything in the army. Here are some clothes and small things that I personally made. You can use them. He-Yan smiled. Thank you, Shining. You're so thoughtful. He-Shining pursed her lips. You go to the battlefield. This is all I can do for you. She called out softly, Sister, you must come back safe and sound. He-Yan winked at her. Don't worry. When I come back, I'll use my military merits to exchange for rewards. I'll buy you the most beautiful jewelry. He-Shining was amused by her words. On the other side, Yin-He urged at the city gate. Marquis Wuan, what are you waiting for? Let's go. I'm coming. He-Yan said as he walked over and got on his horse. Xiao Ju was beside him. She was dressed in martial attire and had a long sword at her waist. She rode beside him. Xia Qingxiu was supported by a maid. He watched as the soldiers and horses left the city. When they could no longer be seen, he gently stroked his lower abdomen and muttered, Musha, quickly say goodbye to your father. Chung Lisu ran out with his family behind his back. At this moment, he was hiding in the crowd. He asked Song Tao Dao, who had also sneaked out, When do you think they will come back? The little girl was not annoyed by his question. She only said, I don't know. After a while, she slowly continued, But I hope that every one of them can come back. The city gate was wide open. Under the sunlight, The wind caused the grass and trees to sway slightly. The soldiers and horses moved forward, like a winding dragon, fearlessly rushing to the battlefield. The banners fluttered in the wind. Chapter 261. It was almost the Qingming festival, and it had been raining for days. The rain in the capital had washed the ground clean, and everywhere was lush with life. It had been more than a month since Dawei's soldiers left the capital. Jiuquan was an endless desert. Lady He, the young deputy general, walked into the tent and said to the female official who was drawing on the ground, "I have already instructed them to reduce the number of camps." He Yin smiled. "Thank you." The deputy general looked at the woman in front of him and felt a little emotional. When the Fuyue army that followed General Fei Hong found out that the leader was a young woman, they were unwilling. They could not be blamed for being picky. After following General Fei Hong of Dawei, they could not help but compare themselves to other generals. He Yin, as a woman, daring to go on the battlefield was admirable. However, in reality, she had never led an army on her own before, and they did not know how skilled she was. Even though she had won the battle against Jiang and the Rundu, she had the right army's commander-in-chief with her. Now, she was alone. Fighting a war was different from a simple martial arts competition. Emperor Zhaokong did this because he was the right army's commander-in-chief. However, within the Fuyue army, they were not truly convinced. In this month, they had only arrived near Jiuquan. Jiuquan was originally a city in the desert, and it was now occupied by Yudo. When He Yin arrived at Jiuquan, she was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, she set up camp near Jiuquan. For the next few days, the soldiers had already started to complain. However, the deputy general knew that things were not as they seemed. He had been in the Fuyue army before, and although he did not have close contact with General Fei Hong, he knew that General Fei Hong dared to take risks. The woman in front of him had not shown her valiant side, but she was more rational and calm. The location of the camp was chosen just right. This location could be used to attack and defend. If there was any movement, it would be easier for them to adjust and retreat. The deputy general was puzzled. He had heard that this was He Yin's first time in Jiuquan, but he seemed to be very familiar with the terrain and had a lot of experience in surviving in the desert. Of course, he had no idea that He Yin was General Fei Hong in the past, and that General Fei Hong had first joined the Fuyue army to fight against the Western Chang people in Mo County. Mo County was not far from Jiuquan, and the terrain was similar. "Sir," the deputy general's gaze fell on the long scroll in front of He Yin. "Are you drawing a map? These Yudo troops are abundant, and they have been plotting for a long time. Although the Fuyue army trains every day, they haven't been on the battlefield for several years. In addition, they suffered heavy losses in the Battle of Huayuan, so their troops are inferior to their opponents. I can't rashly attack and disregard the lives of these soldiers. Before this, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated." Every day, she asked Shi Tu, Wang Ba, and the others to scout around Jiuquan City from afar. They didn't have to go too close, and after they were familiar with the terrain, she would go deeper. After a few days, she finally drew a complete map. With this map, the Fuyue army, which was originally inferior to the Yudo in terms of numbers, will be able to unleash their full potential. However, He Yin sighed in her heart. She knew that the Yudo had rested for many years and would definitely have abundant military equipment. However, when she arrived in Jiuquan, she realized that the Yudo's troops were much stronger than she had imagined. If it was only Jiuquan, it would be fine. If the other three places were also like this battle for the Dawei would be really difficult. For so many years, Emperor Wenxian valued the civil and despised the military. The Dawei's troops had stagnated, and the Yudo had gained the upper hand. It seemed that the Huayuan, Rundu, and even Jiang were all just a pretense. The Yudo didn't show their true military strength. Their goal was to make them lower their guard. That made sense. If it wasn't for that, how could these 4 cities have fallen so quickly? "My lord, you have to take care of your health." The deputy general thought for a while and reminded her, "My lord, You haven't slept much these few days. It's fine. I know what to do. Hien continued without raising her head. Seeing her like this, the deputy general didn't say anything else. He bowed and left. After he left, someone called from outside, "My lord, Hien, come in." Jiang Jiao and Shi Tu came in. Like the other soldiers, they called Hien "My lord." After all, Hien hadn't been made a general yet. But in private, they still liked to call Hien brother he. The two of them were careful and steady in their work. In the current Fuyue army, Hirufei had single-handedly wiped out the elites. There weren't many people who could be trusted. Hien left some important matters to Shi Tu and the others. She raised her head and looked at the two people who were approaching her. She asked, "Did you find any movements from the Yudo?" Jiang Jiao replied, "There was a group of Yudo that went out of the city last night to scout, but they didn't come close to our tent. They only looked around and left. We followed Brother He's instructions and didn't chase after them. But in the past 2 days, there hasn't been any movement." He asked, "Brother He, do we continue to wait?" "Wait," Hien said in a low voice. "We won't take the initiative to attack the city. We'll let them chase after us." "Lure the enemy?" Jiang Jiao was startled. "But if they really take the initiative to attack us, won't we be at a disadvantage? After all, the Yudo have more soldiers than we do." "Don't worry," Hien smiled. "Those Yudo are cunning and suspicious. They definitely won't let all of their soldiers leave the city. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to camp here for so many days and still be safe and sound. They sent scouts out at night to scout the situation. It's nothing more than trying to find out more about us." Hien stood up and walked to the wooden tray in the tent. There were many small hills piled up with sand. Next to the hills were marks made with grains of rice. She picked up a branch and pointed at it for the two people to see. "Moreover, the place where we're camping is a gorge. The Yudo are afraid that we'll set up an ambush on the road behind us. Of course, they won't dare to act rashly. Previously, I fought with the Yudo in Jiang and Rundu. If Maka and Huayet's people sent word back to the Yudo leader of Jiuquan should have heard of my name. But he can't be sure if I can really lead troops. He looks down on me, but because of what happened in Rundu and Jiang, he doesn't dare to look down on me. Guess what he'll do?" "Do what?" Jiang Jiao didn't understand. "He'll find a way to prove that I'm not capable. After he finds evidence, he'll look down on me with reason." Hien smiled. "Although I don't quite understand why the Yudo's generals are always like this, since they want to see a woman who only has a name but doesn't actually know how to lead troops, then I'll show them what they want to see." So, Shi Tu, who had been silent all this time, suddenly brightened up. "Those military camps. If we camp here for a few days and don't make any moves, the Yudo will suspect that we're up to something, so they'll send troops out to investigate at night. If I were the Yudo, I definitely think that it must be because the other side's leader is a woman. My subordinates aren't convinced, and they're afraid of the Yudo soldiers in Jiuquan. So many of them deserted. That's why they underestimated the enemy. When they let down their guard and lead their troops deeper in, then we can set up an ambush." Jiang Jiao was excited at first, but then he thought of something and said hesitantly, "But brother, didn't you say that the Yudo is cunning and suspicious, so they definitely won't send all their troops out of the city?" "Yes," Hien looked at him. "So the troops they've sent out should only be a portion. What we need to annihilate is also only this portion. If they really dare to attack with all their troops, we'll be at a disadvantage. Haven't you thought of wiping them out in one fell swoop?" Shi Tu was a little confused. Hien patted his shoulder. "You haven't been to a real battlefield, so you don't know that a real war can't be ended overnight. The Yudo are much better than us in terms of troops, so we shouldn't use our weakness to attack their strength. I never planned to fight them head-on. Luring them deep in and wiping out a portion of the enemy's troops will be enough to damage the morale of the Yudo. After that, we'll slowly plan our next move. If you want to win a war, you must be patient and calm. Only then can you walk to the end." Hien smiled. "This is just the beginning." Jiang Jiao and Stone looked at the armored woman in front of them. In the past, when they were in the Liang province guards, they already knew that her skills were exceptional and her wisdom was unparalleled. However, now that she stood here, leading an army, unhurriedly spreading out a net, only then did they slowly and truly understand her abilities. "Brother He," Jiang Jiao joked, "you've only participated in the Battle of Jiang once more than us. Why do you seem so familiar with it?" "That's not the same." The woman's lips curled up. "I was born to fight." A gust of wind blew from outside, causing yellow sand to fly everywhere in the desert. As the banners fluttered in the wind, the atmosphere became even more desolate. Sure, Tu muttered, "Ji County isn't far from here. I wonder how General Yin is doing?" Ji County. Tian's gaze became heavy. He heard that the plague there had already spread. Piles of corpses were piled up in the fields outside the city and beside the river. A group of soldiers was digging a very deep hole. Looking inside, one could see corpses wrapped in white cloth. They were already emitting a rotten smell. At first glance, it looked like hell on earth. There was a hut made of straw, and the ground was covered with coarse cloth. Dozens of people were lying flat on the ground. These people were dying, and their bodies showed signs of festering. A young man was brewing medicine at the side, stirring the herbs in the giant vat with a large metal ladle. His body was not very strong, and it was already very strenuous for him to stir the medicinal herbs in this huge vat. Not long after, beads of sweat had already seeped out of his forehead. However, from the beginning to the end, he did not have any intention of slacking off. His snow-white robes had long been soaked in mud and blood. His hand, which had always held a folding fan, was now either holding silver needles to treat illnesses or a bowl of life-saving medicine. The plague in Ji County was more serious than expected. After the Udo took over Ji County, they massacred civilians and abducted women. A large number of corpses were casually thrown into the river. It was also spring, and the plague soon broke out. The Udo directly chased out all the Dawei civilians who were still alive, leaving them to fend for themselves. When Lin Shuanghe and Yin He arrived at Ji County, the fields outside the city were filled with corpses. Lin Shuanghe thought that as a doctor, he was used to seeing death. However, when he first arrived, he could not help but be shocked by the tragedy. Yin He's troops were used to deal with the Udo. There were not many military doctors here. He was the grandson of Lin Shuanghe. Originally, everyone advised him not to personally come into contact with these sick people if he was infected by the plague. However, Lin Shuanghe did not listen to these kind of advice. If he was afraid of death, he would not have chosen to come here in the first place. The dead civilians could not be buried on the spot. They could only be cremated. After turning into white bones, they were buried in a deep pit. This was already the best method. Even so, they could still hear the cries of their family members who were still alive every day. He scooped the medicinal soup into a broken bowl and left it to dry. When it was slightly cooler, he brought it to the straw shed and fed it to the patients. He was originally a very particular young master. He always had some vanity. Even when he treated female patients in Shuo City, he would smile brightly when he saw cute and well-dressed women. But now, the patients here had a strange smell on them. They were dirty and hideous, but he did not dislike them at all. The patient that Lin Shuanghe helped up was a woman. She should still be very young. Her appearance was average, even a little too plump. Lin Shuanghe scooped up a spoonful of medicinal soup and brought it to her lips. She carefully drank it. Looking at the gentle and handsome young master in front of her, she blushed slightly. Even the pain in her body seemed to lessen. "Dr. Lin, I could do it myself," she said in a small voice. "That won't do," Lin Shuanghe said sternly. "How can I let a beautiful lady drink the medicine herself? I am a gentleman who has tender feelings for the fairer sex." The patients in the straw shed heard this and smiled kindly. This Dr. Lin was good-looking and had a good temperament. He was different from the stern and fierce general. He was always smiling. He was also in a mood to joke with everyone. He talked about everything under the sky, even though they might not be able to see the next morning. Even though it was such a tense and sad moment, his attitude never changed. Therefore, with him around, the atmosphere was much more relaxed. It was as if nothing was different from before. It was as if when they woke up, Ji County would still be the same Ji County and everything would be solved. After feeding all the medicine in the straw shed to the patients, Lin Shuanghe told them to rest well. Only then did he pick up all the bowls. He rinsed the bowl of medicine with boiling water before stopping. He rubbed his shoulders and finally had the chance to examine himself. However, when he looked at the stains on his body, he stared blankly for a while before giving up. It was because the white robes he brought were all cut into cloth to bandage the wounds of the patients. Now this was the last piece of clothing. There were no other white robes to replace it. Lin Shuanghe walked to the other side. The soldiers that Yanni brought had fought with the Yudo a few times. There were victories and defeats. The terrain outside Ji County City was complicated. The Yudo were in the city, and it was easy to defend. The battle was a stalemate. Fortunately, Yanni himself was not affected by this matter. He seemed to be in good spirits, and his morale was high. Moreover, the plague was now slightly under control. The panic did not continue to spread. Even though this battle would not be easy to win for the time being, things were moving in a good direction. In last night's surprise attack, Great Wei had won a small victory. There were many new wounded soldiers and some soldiers who died in battle. The soldiers who died in battle were buried on the spot. Lin Shuanghe let the other military doctors treat the wounded soldiers first. He himself took over the most dangerous plague patients. At this moment, he saw a few lightly injured soldiers sitting and talking by the river in front of the tent, and he was sitting on the ground, drinking water from his mouth without any care for his image. Lin Shuanghe dragged his tired feet and walked over. He spread his hands in front of Yanni, and he was confused. He slapped his hand away. "What are you doing?" "General Yin." Lin Shuanghe licked his lips. "I was busy treating the patients until now. You didn't even leave me a bowl of wild vegetable soup. I'm starving to death. You should at least give me something to eat." And he rolled his eyes at him. He took out a dry biscuit and threw it to him. "Eat, eat. You won't choke to death." If it was any other day, Lin Shuanghe would definitely argue with him. Today, he was really weak and hungry. He sat down and took a big bite of the biscuit. The biscuit was dry. When he swallowed it, it hurt his throat. The taste was not considered delicious. Lin Shuanghe really choked, and he looked at him with disdain. He passed the water bottle in his hand to him. "Are you reincarnated from a hungry ghost?" Lin Shuanghe quickly took the water bottle and took a big gulp. After he swallowed the biscuit in his mouth, he said, "Big brother, I haven't eaten for the whole day. Being a prisoner is more than that. Not only do you not have any sympathy for me, you even scolded me. Are you human?" And he looked at the disheveled appearance of the person opposite him. He subconsciously wanted to say a few harsh words. However, when he saw his stained clothes, he swallowed the mocking words that were about to come out of his mouth. Forget it. To be honest, Lin Shuanghe's trip this time was really out of his expectations. Originally, he thought that even though Lin Shuanghe had been to the Liang Province Guard before, the Liang Province Guard did not fight a war. In any case, he lived in the guard station and did not have to suffer the hardships of the world. When he really arrived at Ji County, this pampered and spoiled young master would definitely cry to the heavens. He did not expect that from the beginning until now. Lin Shuanghe had not uttered a single word. Even though he did not draw his sword and soak in blood with those Yudo at the very front, taking care of those injured soldiers and comforting the civilians who were frightened by the plague was not an easy task. Moreover, it was very dangerous. And he snorted and did not reply. Lin Shuanghe took a few more bites of the biscuit and drank some water. The food and drink filled his stomach a little. He did not feel as uncomfortable and became spirited again. He looked at Yin Nangguang and said, "Yin Nangguang, I can be considered to have suffered greatly here. When we return to Shuo capital, you must truthfully report my contributions here to the emperor. In any case, I was given an official position. When have I ever suffered so much in my life? What kind of biscuit is, if it was me in the past, even my family's dog would not eat it." This person began to speak nonsense after coming back to life, and he laughed coldly. "No one here is forcing you to eat it. Furthermore, I have not seen you suffer much. What time is it now? Yet you still have the mood to joke around with women. Lin Shuanghe, you really can't change your habit of womanizing wherever you go. Don't speak as if you were full of righteousness, Lin Shuanghe scolded him. You have a wife and a child, but I am still single. How do I know which girl is destined to be with me? Naturally, I have to try. You have already hung yourself to death on a tree, yet you are jealous of others picking flowers and smelling grass. Are you crazy? When Yeni heard this, he was about to retort when a soldier passing by said in surprise, General Yin, you have a child? Yeni glared at Lin Shuanghe. Lin Shuanghe coughed softly. Xia Qingxiu's pregnancy had not been announced to the public yet. However, now that someone had heard it, there was no reason for him to deny it. And he said, he is not born yet. He is in my wife's womb. The soldier looked to be in his 30s. His face was dark, and he had a simple and honest appearance. Hearing this, he also sat down and scratched his head. That's good. When the general returns from this battle, you'll be able to see the child, just like me in the past. You? Yin he asked, you have a child? Nonsense. Lin Shuanghe could not help but say, do you think you are the only one in the world who could be a father? The man scratched his head and smiled. Yes, there are two. The older one is 3 years old, and the younger one is just 1 month old. When I returned this time, I wanted to accompany my wife for a few more days, but I didn't expect the Yudo to come. I told my wife that when I return after the war and get my salary, I will make a silver necklace for my younger son. As for my older daughter, when I left, she cried so much that my heart was broken, and he had never been an approachable person. Because of his noble background and arrogant temperament, even when he interacted with his subordinates, he would always be a little arrogant. Today, because this man was also his father, it was rare for him to say a few more words. He asked, do you have a deep relationship with your daughter? You have been living in the military camp, and you don't go home often, right? How could she still be close to you? Lin Shuanghe was puzzled. Are you seeking the experience of your predecessors for the trouble you may encounter in the future? Yeni scolded him, shut up. Then, he looked at the man in front of him. Tell me quickly. This, I don't know either. The man was a little confused. It's true that I don't go home often, but every time I go home, I remember to bring her favorite malt candy, buy her beautiful cloth, and ask my wife to make new clothes for her. General Yin, you don't have to worry. People say that daughters are all biological fathers. If your wife gives birth to a daughter, she will definitely be very close to you, General Yin. And he was elated by his words, but then his expression became serious. What if it's a son? Isn't that better? The man said, the general can bring the young master with him. Father and son don't have to be separated on the battlefield. And he suddenly understood and looked at the person in front of him. I didn't expect you to be so smart as a father. Lin Shuanghe was speechless when he heard this. After the man was praised by his superior, he laughed foolishly for a while. Suddenly, he became silent again. After a while, he sighed and said, when my daughter left, she kept hugging my leg. I know that she was afraid that I would die on the battlefield. If, he looked at the sky far away, I can go back alive, I will definitely buy her favorite candy cake. And he was stunned for a while. After a while, he also looked into the distance. The sky was dyed red by the setting sun. The setting sun was like blood, and the field was gentle and silent. Don't worry, he said, she will definitely eat the candy cake you bought. Chapter 262. The yellow sand stretched for thousands of miles, and the dark clouds hung low. The sandstorm kicked up dust as the two armies clashed. After the Dawei troops camped outside Jiuquan City for 5 days, the Yudo in the city could no longer hold back. The number of soldiers decreased by the day, and the marquises from Dawei never faced them head-on. Even the spies they sent out fought with the Dawei soldiers. When the Dawei soldiers reached the city gates, they did not dare to continue the chase. Ever since it was engraved in the Yudo's bones, the news that Maka and Huyate had sent back was treated as an excuse for their incompetence. A woman, who only had a bit of fame because of her husband, was nothing to be afraid of. Even the Dawei's own subordinates could not control her. In just 5 days, half of them had deserted. The Yudo leader was certain that the Dawei soldiers were afraid. That night, he ordered his elite troops to chase after the remaining Dawei troops. When the Yudo soldiers reached the outskirts of the city, and walked towards the Gobi Desert, they suddenly heard the deafening sounds of fighting. The Dawei troops who were lying in ambush on both sides fired arrows at the same time. The arrows rained down like a storm, catching them off guard. Right at this moment, another group of cavalrymen charged over with sabers in their hands. The one in the lead was a young woman in red armor. Her eyes were sharp, and she held a pale sword in her hand. It was as if she wanted to cut through the sky. She was unrivaled as she rode on the wind. The two armies clashed, and the sound of drums filled the air. When the Fuyue army was taken in by General Fei Hong, they were like divine soldiers. No one could stop them. Ever since the real General Fei Hong left, they had not been able to hold their heads high like they were today. The frail and petite woman seemed to contain an enormous amount of power within her body. The Fuyue army was like the best blade in her hands. Her formations and ambushes were all exquisite. He crouched on the back of the horse. The long sword was like her arm. She charged into the enemy's camp without any fear. Wherever the long sword flew, blood sprayed, and the enemy's head was chopped off from the horse. Her smile lit up the gloomy night in the Gobi Desert. The Yudo was beaten to the point that they had to abandon their armor and flee. The last trace of blood on the long saber was wiped away, and the fierce battle was over. Yudo was either dead or captured. Although the city gate was not broken, the first battle could be considered victory. The deputy general excitedly found the woman who was walking back. Ignoring his tired body, he ran over and said, "My lord, this battle was won beautifully. My lord, you have a brilliant plan." He smiled. "It's not my doing." Her armor was full of bloodstains, and her face was also stained with blood. Perhaps it was not only Yudo's, but her posture was straight, and she did not look tired at all. Instead, her eyes were bright and full of energy. When the Fuyue army saw her, they felt relieved. It seemed that as long as she was here, they would definitely be the winner in this battle with the Yudo. In the army, strength and fists were the most important thing. If it was before, the Fuyue army still had some objections to He Yan's leadership and did not understand why she ordered people to reduce the number of soldiers every day. But after this battle, she really won the hearts of the soldiers. Everyone could see the effectiveness of the ambush and the formation. She took the lead on the battlefield and led the soldiers. Her sword was awe-inspiring, and it was not fake. Perhaps if the real General Fei Hong was here, he would also have the same style. He said, "Let the military doctors treat the injured brothers first. Those who are not injured, clean up the battlefield." She paused and said, "It's daybreak. We still have to attack the city." "Attack the city? It's only been one night. I'm afraid that the brothers..." He smiled and said, "It's not really attacking the city. It's just harassing them." Although this battle was won beautifully, it was not an easy victory. The army that was sent out was the elite of the Yudo. It was difficult for the Fuyue army to fight against them, but they still had the upper hand. And this was only the first step. Someone ran from behind and called out to her while panting, "He Darren." He turned around and saw that it was Jiang Jiao. She asked, "What's wrong?" "Brother Sean." Jiang Jiao's face was very ugly. "You should go and take a look." Hong Shan's chest was pierced by the Yudo. After taking off his armor, his clothes were dyed red with blood. Wang Ba and the others surrounded He Yan. The military doctor saw that He Yan came over and shook his head. He Yan walked over. This man who always patted her shoulder with a smile and called her he would never wake up. Hong Shan's skills were not the best among this group of people, but he always tried his best to keep up with everyone's pace. He Yan still remembered that the first person she met when she joined the army was Hong Shan. This man treated her as his thin and weak younger brother and always took care of her. He also once said, "There's nothing wrong with being a soldier, at least you'll be alive." But now he died on the battlefield. He did not have any keepsakes on him, so there was nothing he could take away. Wang Ba, who always said a few words, did not say anything at this moment. His eyes were a little red. They were all brothers who went through a lot together, and their relationship was deeper than others. But the cruelty of war was that no one knew in advance who would be the next to leave forever, and she did not have the time and energy to grieve here. "Let's bury him," she said softly, stood up, and walked forward. Wamba couldn't help but say angrily, "Hey, that's it. Tidy up." The woman's voice was firm and clear, without any unnecessary sadness. At daybreak, attack the city. The city gates opened. Thousands of soldiers and horses were on the mausoleum path, war drums thundering. The young general in silver armor was like a nimble silver dragon in the night, his blade carrying a valiant coldness. Gouet de Zhonglong's style of fighting was direct and fierce, pressing forward courageously. The Yin army under his command was the same. The two armies fought, leaving no way out. Although the plague in Ji County was severe, it was now under Lin Shuang's control. After a few small probing battles, the Yin army won a few more battles. Today, the city gates were finally breached. It was a true head-on battle. Perhaps it was because Yudo was more afraid of General Feng Yin than Yin He. Most of Yudo's soldiers were sent to Yunzi as reinforcements. The remaining soldiers in Ji County were not as many as the Yin army. Dewey temporarily had the upper hand. Winning a battle was the best way to raise morale. At this moment, the Yin army's morale was at its peak. The surrounding soldiers shouted, "Kill Yudo and get them out of the way. Get out of the way." Some people laughed and shouted, "After this battle, maybe we will be the first to return to Shuajing." The people who said these words liked to hear them. Everyone knew that Generals Yin loved to compete with General Feng Yin. If they won this battle and returned to Shuajing first, wouldn't that mean that their general was stronger than military governor Xiao? And he also felt good when he heard this. At this moment, he saw the Dewei soldiers fighting Yudo in front of him. They looked familiar. He immediately remembered that this was the man who had told him about his child a few days ago. And he still remembered that this man's daughter was only 3 years old. At this moment, he was fighting Yudo with all his might and did not see the arrow flying from behind him. And he frowned. He could not be distracted on the battlefield. Perhaps it was the man's desire to return home that left a deep impression. Or perhaps it was the little girl waiting for her father to bring back Tangguai. It made Yin He think of the unborn child in Xia Chengxiu's womb. In any case, he flew over and pushed the man away. The arrow brushed past their hair. Yin He heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, he heard the panic cry of someone beside him. "General!" Yunzi was close to the sea. Tongji County and Zhouchuan were in two completely opposite directions. The night was as dark as ink. The sound of waves hitting the rocks could be heard from the shore. The wind blew the damp smell of the sea. Looking from ashore, the sea and the sky were one. It was like taking a boat out to sea. If one kept going forward, one would reach the 9 heavens. If there was no war, the scenery here would be beautiful. However, once there was war, the vast and distant became desolate and cold. Torches could be seen in the tent. A young man in black armor was looking at the map on the sand table in deep thought. Someone walked in from outside and said, "Young master, the people you ordered to pass by the city gate with the rice loads have been arranged." Xiao Zhu nodded. Good. Dewei had 2 famous generals. In the eyes of the Yudo, General Fei Hong was no longer around. The only one left who was difficult to deal with was General Feng Yin. Therefore, Yunzi had the most Yudo soldiers. However, after Xiao Zhu led the southern prefecture soldiers to Yunzi, the Yudo did not fight him head-on. Perhaps it was because in the past few years, the Yudo had suffered a lot at the hands of Xiao Zhu. Or perhaps they had credited Xiao Zhu for the victory of Dewei in the battle between the Rundu and Jiang. This time, they would not act rashly. Therefore, the city gate was closed, and they vowed not to leave the city. Fei Nu looked at the young man sitting in front of the table. "Young master, these Yudo have been unwilling to make a move because they want to wear down the southern prefecture soldiers. Although the southern prefecture soldiers and the 9 Flags Battalion soldiers will not be afraid, because of this, they will not have enough food as time goes by. This was the most important thing to consider. That's what they're planning," Xiao Zhu said. However, he twitched the corner of his mouth and his eyes were cold. The Yudo arrived at Yunzi before the southern prefecture soldiers. Even if there is food in the city, they have more people. The food in the city will not last long. They won't wear us down? The young man's smile was mocking. They will wear us down. The Yudo wanted to wait until the southern prefecture soldiers were starving and had low morale before they attacked. However, as time went by, the southern prefecture soldiers would not be the only ones worn down. The Yudo soldiers would also face the same predicament. So, young master purposely let them carry the rice through the city gate for the Yudo to see. Let them know that Dewey has enough food. Let's see how long they can last. Fei Nu lowered his head and said, "Young master is wise." Xiao Ju put down the short stick that he used to point out the map and walked out of the tent. There was no moon outside. The patrolling soldiers walked around with torches in their hands. There were also soldiers who sat together and ate their rations. When they saw Xiao Ju, they greeted him politely. The Southern Prefecture soldiers and the Nine Flags Battalion were brought up by Xiao Ju, especially the Nine Flags Battalion. It was different from the Liangzhou Guards and the Fuyue Army. The soldiers were not too close to their superiors. It was not that they were cold-hearted. It was because the right army commander had a cold personality and was very strict about military discipline. The women only saw the good looks of the jade-faced army commander, but the people in the barracks knew that under his good looks was the heart of the king of hell. As a result, the Southern Mansion army didn't even hear a single joke. Xiao Ju walked past the tent. A soldier poked Chi Wu, who was beside him, and whispered, "Chi Wu, what is that hanging on the army commander's waist? Is it a sachet? Why is there such an ugly thing hanging on his waist?" Chi Wu was speechless. In any case, Xiao Ju was one of the most handsome men in the Great Way. Even if he was wearing armor, he would still be able to wear it in a particularly heroic and elegant manner. However, this time, when he was deployed, the accessory on his waist had become a fragrant sachet. It was unknown what it was embroidered with, but this thing was really too conspicuous, making it difficult for people to ignore. The soldiers did not dare to ask. Finally, a brave soldier could not hold himself back and asked Xiao Ju's personal subordinate, Chi Wu. "That's right. Chi Wu, what is that?" Someone else asked, "I see that the army commander keeps it on his body every day. It seems like he treasures it a lot. Where did it come from?" Chi Wu waved his hand. "That was embroidered by the young mistress for the young master." "What do you know?" "Young mistress?" The soldiers who gathered around looked at each other. The one who spoke first smiled awkwardly. "The young mistress's needlework is really special. It is quite special." Someone nodded and said, "The army commander wears such a special sachet on his body every day." "Chi Wu, I heard that the army commander dotes on the young mistress very much. Is that true?" "That's impossible. When have you seen the army commander dote on anyone? Can you imagine?" "I can't." Chi Wu was annoyed by the questions. He stood up and pointed at them as he lectured. "Do your night duty properly. What are you thinking about every day? Do you have a wife? Why are you so concerned about others? Be careful that the young master will punish you if he hears this." When he stood up, someone saw the boots on his feet and asked curiously, Chi Wu, your boots are quite special. Why is there a flower embroidered on it?" What? There's no flower." "Wow, there's really a flower. This must be embroidered by a lady." "Chi Wu, when did you have a sweetheart? Why didn't you tell us? You're not loyal enough." "What sweetheart?" Chi Wu's face turned red. He scolded, "Don't talk nonsense." He turned and left. Xiao Ju walked to the shore. The shore was illuminated by the torches, reflecting the sparkling waves on the water. The night without the moonlight was somewhat chilly. He reached out and untied the sachet on his waist. On the sachet, the crooked moon was looking at him. It was as if he could see through the poor needlework and see the bright smile of the owner. The young man stared at the sachet in his hand, the corners of his mouth slightly curved. Jiuchuan and Yunzi were too far away. It would take a long time for the news to reach here. He didn't know how her situation was, but she should be able to handle it. He raised his eyes to look at the horizon. The sea was endless. Only the sound of the waves could be heard. It was like the ravings of a lover's dream, scattered little by little in the night of the battlefield. Shuajing. The wind in the night blew open the window that was not closed properly. The paper on the table rustled in the wind. The person on the bed opened her eyes. She lit the lamp and got out of bed. She walked to the window and looked at the night sky. The capital was quiet. There was not the slightest bit of panic about the war. It was hard to imagine what the soldiers were doing on the battlefield thousands of li away. Behind her, a maid's sleepy voice sounded. "Madam, why are you up?" Xia Chengxiu smiled. "It's nothing. I just couldn't sleep." The maid walked to her side and reached out to close the window. She supported her as she walked in. "Madam, be careful. Now that you are pregnant, the spring wind is cold. Don't catch a cold. If the general asks, I will have to suffer." The entire Yin manor knew that although General Yin was arrogant and domineering, he did not like to punish his subordinates. However, as long as it concerned Xia Qingxiu, he would be very calculative. When Xia Qingxiu first entered the manor, the beautiful daughter of the manor's housekeeper was hostile towards Xia Qingxiu. She secretly provoked him. When General Yin found out, he chased her and her family out of the manor. He did not give them any face. Before this expedition, Yin He had specifically told everyone in the Yin manor that if anything happened to Xia Chengxiu and the child in her belly, the entire manor would be implicated. Generals, Yin was a man of his word. Of course, the servants were always worried about Xia Chengxiu, afraid that something would happen. Xia Chengxiu could not help but laugh when he thought of how worried Yin He was. He said, "It's not that exaggerated. I have people looking after me in the manor. The doctor comes to check my pulse every day. I'm not that delicate." The servant girl smiled and said, "The general is also worried about madam." Xia Qingxiu lowered her head and looked at her lower abdomen. She reached out and touched it. She couldn't feel anything, but strangely, she felt as if she could sense the joy of the little guy inside her through the touch of her blood vessels. The servant girl saw her actions and asked with a smile, "If the general can catch up with the birth of the young master or young lady, that would be good. The general loves madam so much. After the young master and young lady are born, he will be the best father in Shuajing." "If that's the case," Xia Qingxiu said with a smile, "he must have thought of how to teach the child." The child had not been born, but he had already named it. Xia Qingxiu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Before he left, he seriously apologized to Muxia. He said that the war was urgent and that he could not accompany her for now. When he returned, he would make it up to her and asked her not to be angry at her father. Who knew if the child in her belly was a Muxia or a Liangjiang? However, Xia Qingxiu inexplicably looked forward to it. What would Yin He be like when he became a father? Before she married Yin He, she had seen this young man's fierce and provocative appearance. At that time, she did not expect that this person would become her husband. She also did not expect that the general of Guide, who fought against the heavens and earth outside, would be so obedient to her at home. If he became a father, whether it was a Muxia or a Liangjiang, he would love and teach them with all his heart. He would watch them grow up day by day and become outstanding people, just like him. "Madam, you missed the general, right?" The servant girl beside her looked at her expression and asked. Xia Chengxiu smiled. Under the light, the woman's originally gentle eyes were unbelievably gentle. After some time, she made a sound of agreement and replied seriously, "I miss him." Chapter 263. After the Guyu rain, it will be summer soon. At this time of the year, it should be raining nonstop. But in Jiuquan, the desert stretched as far as the eye could see. It was already summer, and the sun was long and hot. The soldiers' lips were cracked and peeling. The battle was particularly fierce. After the victory of the first battle, Hien led the Fuyue army to fight against the Yudo several times. The Wutuo people had suffered at the hands of the Marquis of Wu and time again. They gradually understood that the Marquis of Wu and was not a useless person who was lucky enough to be appointed an official. Her ingenuity in setting up formations, her bravery in battle, and even her proficiency in swordsmanship made the Wutuo people think of the legendary General Fei Hong. It was the same. Hien began to counterattack after several battles and roughly grasped the Yudo's fighting style. She was very patient and was not in a hurry to attack the city. She only used the tactic of defend when the enemy comes, pursue when the enemy leaves, attack when the enemy leaves. The Yudo could not stand the constant harassment. For a long time, Their morale was low and they were depressed and tired. It seemed that they were losing the battle each time. Today was the day to attack the city. A woman in red armor galloped on the battlefield on a horse. Flags and drums shook the sky, and swords flashed. Under her command, the army was as agile as a dragon and rushed toward the enemy's camp with a murderous aura. Her sword was indomitable. The two armies fought, and the land was dyed red. Mamai was fighting with a strong Yudo man. Although he was young and strong, he was not as good as Shur-Tu in terms of skill. At this moment, he was using all his strength. Suddenly, he kicked the knee of the man in front of him. The man staggered from the kick. Mamai took advantage of this opportunity and slit his throat. His opponent fell. He was relieved, but before he could show a happy smile, he was suddenly pushed to the ground and rolled twice. Xiaomai's heart tightened. He subconsciously raised his head and saw Shur-Tu holding him with his back. A black arrow pierced his back, leaving only a bit of the arrow feather exposed. Shur-Tu's lips moved, but he only had time to say two words, "Be careful." Another arrow pierced his back. The young man spat out a mouthful of blood. "Run!" "Big brother," Xiaomai shouted in grief. On the other side, Wang Ba saw this and rushed toward the two Yudo archers who were lying in ambush. The lively young man who was always smiling was now panicked. "Big, big, big." Stone strenuously looked at his younger brother in front of him. Two arrows had hit him in the chest. His strength was slowly draining away. The battlefield was so chaotic, and little Wheat was in danger. Then the light in his eyes went out. Xiaomai let out a painful cry. Unfortunately, this was a battlefield, and no one noticed his sadness. Death happened at any time and place. Huang Xiong's armor was broken, and there were many wounds on his body and face. He was already very old. He could easily deal with ordinary thieves, but it was a little difficult to deal with these fierce and cunning Yudo. The Yudo in front of him was fighting with him. His hand was cut by a knife, and his flesh was badly mutilated. When he held his knife, he felt a piercing pain. His strength was gradually draining away. Even the golden knife that had accompanied him for many years became extraordinarily heavy, as if it was difficult to wield. The Yudo saw his exhaustion. He laughed and said, "No, this big guy can't take it anymore." Probably because of his majestic appearance and the conspicuous golden knife, the Yudo paid attention to him and shouted, "This knife is mine." Huang Xiong said in a low voice, "In your dreams." He held the big knife in his hand and chopped at the edge of the opponent's knife. At this moment, he suddenly felt a chill on his back. A long knife penetrated his chest from his back, and he staggered. The Yudo behind him laughed presumptuously. However, halfway through his laughter, the bear-like man shouted and suddenly turned around. Ignoring the wounds on his body, he raised the big knife in his hand and instantly cut off the head of the Yudo behind him. The other man's complacent laughter also came to an abrupt end at the moment when a ray of golden light was about to take his life. The armor on his body was completely pierced by the tip of the knife. He held the handle and pulled it out. The moment he pulled it out, he finally couldn't hold on and fell to the ground. In his hand, he was still holding the golden knife tightly. For so many years, he had been homeless because of this knife, but it was also this knife that accompanied him for thousands of miles to kill his enemies. He was now alone in this world, and he had no attachments. Before he died, he only had this close friend who had accompanied him for many years to accompany him. But the strong man looked at the sky. The prayer beads on his chest were warm and dark. In a trance, he saw his mother gently praying in front of the temple for her son to return soon. His sisters were preparing hot dishes. His elder brother was in the courtyard asking his nephew about the homework he had just learned today. It was so peaceful, so comfortable. He closed his eyes in peace, and his expression was unprecedentedly peaceful. The Longzi had been wandering outside for so long, and now he could finally return home. The city was broken. Their armor and soldiers were withdrawn, and their bones were exposed in the wilderness. The soldiers cheered for this hard-won victory. Everyone who survived had a happy smile on their face. The woman in the lead was in high spirits, and she didn't look tired at all. She was always like this, as if she never had a weak side. It was because of her that the morale of the Fuyue army was rising day by day. Yudo was beaten to the point of abandoning the city and escaping. At this point, Jiuquan was finally retaken by the Wei. Hien's face still had traces of blood that he hadn't had time to wipe off. Just as he was about to go and count the spoils of war, he saw Wang Bao walk towards him with a serious expression. The smile at the corner of his lips immediately disappeared. "Come take a look," he said. "In the past few days of war, people constantly died." The men from the Liang province guard finally realized that this time was different from the previous times. The war made them grow quickly and made them quiet, determined, and calm. Wang Bao was no longer the person who would shout and shout. These days, he was much quieter. Hien followed him forward. The soldiers who died in battle could only be buried on the spot. The soldiers who survived were checked one by one to see if they had any keepsakes on them. If they could find them, they would return to Shuajing and give them to their families. Before the soldiers here went to battle, most of them had a letter on them. If they were unfortunate enough to die in battle, their comrades would bring the letter back to their families. Hien saw Shi in Huangxiao. She understood a long time ago that when people went onto the battlefield, they couldn't decide whether they lived or died. The moment they put on their armor, they were prepared to give up their lives. The people who survived to the end were the least fortunate. They couldn't help but see their comrades leave one by one. First, it was Hong Shan. Now it was Shi in Huangxiao. Shi had died from an arrow. The arrow had been pulled out, and the clothes on his chest had been dyed red. Huang Xiong had died from a blade. Rumor had it that in the end, he had perished together with Tu Yudo. When they finally found him, he was still tightly gripping the blade in his hand. Hien half knelt in front of the two of them and carefully tidied up their tattered clothes. Xiao Mai cried until her voice was hoarse. Her eyes were red. Hien still remembered the first time she met Shi and Xiao Mai. They were hunters who grew up in the mountains. They told her about their ambition to join the army. Xiao Mai was lively and naive. She loved to eat and play. Shi was taciturn and prudent. The war had changed everything. A soldier asked, "Sir, Brother Huang's blade, if such a good blade was used on the battlefield, it would make people envious. He has no family. This blade is his family. It has accompanied him for so many years. It should be buried with him." Hien looked at the man on the ground, the big brother who couldn't tell the direction and always got lost. Looking at the calm smile on his face, it seemed that he had already found the way home. She stood up. Her sadness lasted for only a moment. She said, "Tell them to come to my tent. I have something to discuss about the war." Her footsteps were firm. She didn't look back. As if to celebrate the victory of retaking Jiuquan, the moon came out in the middle of the night. The woman in the tent put the last stroke on the map. She rubbed her eyes, stood up, and walked out. She climbed up the city gate tower and looked into the distance. Outside the city, there was a vast expanse of yellow sand. In the distance, the beacon fire shone on the flat ground. The Gobi Desert was desolate. The white city gate tower here was like a lonely boat in the deep sea. A crescent moon hung in the night sky, illuminating the desolate night. She sat down on the ground. Her stomach made a soft sound. She realized that she hadn't eaten anything since the end of the war. Hien was startled when a dry biscuit was handed to her. Jiang Jiao walked over from behind and sat down beside her. He said, "I knew you probably didn't eat, so I saved it for you." Hien smiled. "Thank you." She took a bite of the dry biscuit. The coarse grain entered her stomach, bringing her true satisfaction. Jiang Jiao handed her a bottle of water. She raised her head and drank a big mouthful. Her posture was cheerful. There were still traces of mud and blood on her face. She looked particularly haggard. Only her eyes were still as bright as the stars. He suddenly felt a little emotional. In the Fuyue army, everyone said that Hien was born brave. She commanded troops like a god and never felt tired. Even the men needed to rest after such a big battle. However, since she left the battlefield, she had been counting the results of the war, arranging and commanding the next pursuit, and reanalyzing the enemy situation. Until now, she hadn't changed her clothes or eaten any dry food. Only now, on the city gate tower, when she sat on the ground, did she reveal a little of her own exhaustion. He heard He Yan's voice. How is Xiaoman? Not so good. Wang Ba has been accompanying her. Jiang Jiao's voice lowered. Half of the Liangzhou guards had left. As for who would be the next to leave, and who would be able to walk to the end and return to Shuajing alive, no one could say for sure. He Yan raised her head and drank a mouthful of water. Her voice was still calm. We have to make him come out quickly. These words were cruel, but Jiang Jiao understood that this was a battlefield. On the battlefield, there was no time for sorrow. He Yan didn't cry, but that didn't mean she wasn't sad. After all, she was a woman. Staying here alone and watching the people around her leave one by one should be very powerless. Brother He, Jiang Jiao asked, do you miss the commander? He was answered with silence. After a while, He Yan raised her head and looked far away from the city gate tower. In the desolate desert, only the silver-white crescent moon quietly hung in the night sky. No. She raised the corner of her mouth slightly. It was as if she saw another person through the crescent moon. I know, he's here. The sound of crows came from afar. The cold night wind blew the torches like stars. The young female general stood up and patted the shoulder of the person beside her. Let's go back early. There's still a tough battle to fight tomorrow. She turned and left. Ji region had been raining for days. The rainwater washed away the mud and blood on the ground. If not for the scattered weapons and corpses, Bing wouldn't be able to tell that there had just been a fierce battle. In the tent, a man dressed in hemp clothes looked at the general sitting in the tent. He was shocked and angry. Yannan Guang, you don't want to live anymore. His last white robe was not spared from the fate of being cut into strips of cloth. From then on, he wore the hemp clothes of a commoner and walked through the Yin family army camp. Today, the Lin family young master no longer had his elegant demeanor. 20 hours a day, his face was dirty and his hands were stained with blood. The battle was getting more and more tense by the day. There were more and more injured soldiers. There were not enough military doctors, and he was the most powerful one here. He was also the one who made people feel at ease. But today, only Lin Shuanghe knew how uneasy he was, and he did not pay any attention to him. He only frowned as he counted the results of last night's battle. Last night, the Yin army had defeated the Wutuo people. They had killed 10,000 enemies and seized over 1,000 horses. This was a good thing worthy of celebration. Yin Nangguang, did you hear what I said? Lin Shuanghe said anxiously. I heard you. Yin He replied impatiently. Then do you know that you are in danger now? Lin Shuanghe lowered his voice. You will lose your life. That day, Yin He acted and saved the father of 2 children from the hands of the Wutuo people. However, he was injured by the Wutuo people who had secretly shot him. Although his vital organs were not injured, only his arm was pierced. However, the other party had originally come for him, and the arrow was smeared with poison. Lin Shuanghe could not detoxify the poison. On the battlefield, there were no herbs for him to slowly develop an antidote. The poison was spreading day by day. If he did not find an antidote soon, then he would die. But he had been killing and fighting for the past few days. The poison on his wound had spread faster and deeper. It made Lin Shuanghe's heart jump. If Yin He could temporarily put aside the battle, the poison would spread slower and he might be able to last longer. But now, if this continued, maybe he would not be able to wait until he returned to Shuajing. Have you developed an antidote? Yin He frowned and asked. Lin Shuanghe was startled. He replied dejectedly, No. Since you're going to die, why do you care so much? Yin He said disapprovingly. He did not seem to care at all. It was as if he was talking about someone else's life. He did not even feel worried. Lin Shuanghe asked, Do you really want to continue like this? Lin Shuanghe, this is a battlefield. Yin He's voice was solemn. Recently, we have been receiving good news. The Yudo's morale has been greatly damaged. If this continues, we will be able to take back Ji County very soon. At this time, we have to strike while the iron is hot. If we don't take them down when their morale is at its peak, it will be difficult to wait for such an opportunity in the future. On the battlefield, there is no time to rest. Lin Shuanghe, closed his eyes. He knew that Yin He was right. What he said was the truth. However, as a medical practitioner, he knew that if this continued, there might be a slim chance of survival, but it would become impossible. You have to know, he spoke with difficulty. If you continue like this and don't rest, at most 3 months. 3 months. Yin He said, then we will finish this battle within 3 months. Until now, he was still thinking about the outcome of this battle. Lin Shuanghe could not help but say, even if you don't care, don't you think about Qingxiu? Yin Nanguang, your child is still waiting for you to return. Yin He's fingers trembled slightly, but his expression remained normal. He said nonchalantly, since you know, then hurry up and create an antidote for me. Otherwise, what's the use of having you here? Since you are a godly doctor, do you only know how to treat women and not men? If it was any other time, Lin Shuanghe would have stepped forward to argue with someone who questioned his medical skills. But now he only looked at Yin He. He suddenly understood that even if this person knew that he only had 1 day to live, he would use this last day to be a good commander. On the battlefield, he was not Xia Chengxiu's husband, nor was he Yin Muxia's father. He was the leader of the Yin army, the general of Dawei. That was all. I understand. Lin Shuanghe looked at him deeply. I will do my best. He turned and walked out. In front of the table, Yin He raised his eyes and looked at Lin Shuanghe's back. Suddenly, he vomited a ball of black blood. The poison would not only cause him to lose his life, it would also cause him to suffer. But this could not be revealed in front of others. The Yin army needed a backbone. Before they won this battle, he could never fall. And he casually pulled a cloth from the side and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His painful expression disappeared, and his gaze landed on the defensive map in front of him again. 3 months, he had to end this battle quickly. In the academy, on the green lotus leaves in the pond, pink buds started to appear. Dragonflies swept across the water, their glass-like wings creating a faint ripple. After the beginning of summer, the days became longer. The wind also brought with it warm sunlight. In the afternoon, in the academy, the sun was just right. The youth sat down and dozed off. Good times were always exceptionally long. Someone ran in from outside with joy and excitement. He jumped onto the table in one breath and said, good news, good news. Marquis Wu and the Fuyue army led by Master He has taken back Juchuan and defeated the Wu Tao bandits. The originally dull afternoon was instantly awakened by this news. Really? They took back Juchuan so quickly? It's true. The news is already spread outside. I just came back from outside. That Marquis Wu and is very powerful. The 4 great generals sent out their troops separately, but the Fuyue army, led by a woman, was the first to take down a city. So what if she is a woman? Wasn't the original leader of the Fuyue army, General Fei Hong, also a woman? I think Marquis Wu is also a heroine. Who knows? Maybe when she returns to the capital, the emperor will give her a high-ranking official. In the future, she will be the Wuan general. In the corner of the academy, the youth who was sitting there was stunned. When he heard this news, he still couldn't believe it. He and one, he took back Jiuchuan. Just as he was thinking, a group of people suddenly surrounded him. He Yinsheng, your sister is so powerful. She achieved merit so quickly. I think your He family will only soar up in the future. Hey, brother He, from today onwards, we are good brothers. When you become successful in the future, don't forget to help this little brother. Bah, all of you are talking behind Master He's back. All of you are relying on military governor Xiao and don't have any ability. Now all of you are slapping your faces. That master, he went to Jiuchuan by himself, but he was able to send back the news before Generals Yin, military governor Xiao, and Hui general. It can be seen that he is truly capable. Yes, he is truly capable. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Brother Yinsheng. He Yinsheng was surrounded by people, but he wasn't blinded by the enthusiastic compliments of his classmates. There was only one thought in his mind. He Yin won, and she was safe. The youth slightly turned his head, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. In his heart, he thought, at least she kept her promise this time. The pomegranate tree in Shao Mansion became the best place to hide from the sun during summer. The yellow dog was lying under the tree, lazily squinting its eyes. Qing Mei added water to its water tank and wiped the sweat from its forehead. Just as she was about to return to her room, a shadow suddenly jumped in from outside and said cheerfully, "Sister Qing Mei, Sister Qing Mei." Qing Mei was startled. When she saw Bai Guo running over like a gust of wind, she hurriedly supported her. "What's the matter? Why are you so happy?" "I just went outside and heard the people outside saying that second young madam won the battle and led the Fuyue army to take back Zhochuan. Qing Mei, second young madam has done a great deed." Air Mao was also infected by Bai Guo's excitement. He jumped up and ran 2 circles around Bai Guo. Bai Rongwei was supported by a maidservant as she walked over. She couldn't hide the surprise in her voice. "Really? It's true," Bai Guo happily said. "They say that second young madam is very powerful. Although it's the first time she led an army alone, she has won many battles and took back Zhochuan so quickly. This servant heard that when second young madam comes back, the emperor will definitely reward her handsomely. Who knows, maybe we'll have another general in our mansion." Bai Rongwei was amused by her words and said angrily, "You really know how to talk." She then shook her head and smiled. The reward for the meritorious service is not important. As long as Ahe is safe, everyone will be happy. Her lower abdomen was gradually bulging, but because of the war at the border, Xiao Ruby was also very busy every day. When Bai Rongwei was alone, she couldn't help but worry about Xiao Ju and He Yin. If the two of them were in the same place, it would be fine. They could take care of each other, but they were in opposite directions. Xiao Ju was fine because she was always on the battlefield. The Nanfu army was also led by Xiao Zhongwu, but He Yin was different. It was her first time leading an army. Not everyone in the Fuyue army was convinced. She was also a woman, so there were many inconveniences. Bai Rongwei's heart was broken. Now, she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. "I think it won't be long before Uncle he returns." Bai Rongwei smiled and said, "If he knows that he has won a battle, he will be very happy." Ever since He Yin and Xiao Ju left the capital, Bai Rongwei and Xiao Jing went to He Sui's house more frequently. First, the house that Xiao Ju bought for them was close to the Xiao family. It was only a street away, so it was convenient for them to come and go. Second, Bai Rongwei thought that if she, as the sister-in-law, was so worried, He Sui, as the father, would be even more worried. He Yinsheng was also a 17 or 18-year-old youth. In the end, he wasn't as caring as his daughter. Xiao Zhongwu and his wife had passed away early. He Sui was He Yan's father, so he was their father. Therefore, the husband and wife often went to talk to He Sui to relieve his boredom. This in-law was more harmonious than the other families in the capital. "Eldest young master will be back soon," Bai Guo chirped. "Foreign, since today is a happy occasion, this servant will go to the kitchen to make some good dishes. Let's treat it as a celebration." "Okay," Bai Rongwei smiled and said, "Qing Mei, you should also go to the He family. Tonight, call Uncle He and Yunsheng to eat together." Qing Mei heard this and revealed a big smile. "Okay, this servant will go now." In the palace, in the imperial study, Zhaokong Emperor looked at the memorial in front of him and couldn't help but reveal a gratified smile. Since he ascended the throne, this was probably the happiest thing. The chamberlain saw the expression on the emperor's face and said, "The Empress Dowager came this morning. Your Majesty is busy with government affairs. It is already late." Zhaokong Emperor stood up and said, "Zhen will go see Mo." In Qinglan Palace, concubine Lan, who should be the Empress Dowager now, was leaning on a soft couch and reading. Although she was already the Empress Dowager, she didn't move out of the palace. Her actions were the same as before. "Muhu!" Zhaokong Emperor approached and called out. The Empress Dowager put down the scroll in her hand and looked at the person in front of her. She smiled slightly. "Your Majesty seems to be in a good mood today. Are you happy because of the victory in Zhochuan?" In front of his mother, Emperor Zhaokong finally revealed his true feelings. He smiled and said, Of course, I didn't think that the Wuan Marquis would be so valiant. Compared to Yin He, Xiao Huijin, he was the first to take down a city. Although he originally gave the military power to Hien, most of it was for the sake of Xiao Ju. As for Hien's ability, he had only heard about it from others. He didn't know how good she was at leading troops in battle. Now, the news of victory made him feel relieved. This woman was more outstanding than he had imagined. It seems that your Majesty still underestimated her. You didn't think that Marquis Wen could really gallop on the battlefield. The Empress Dowager understood. Zhaokong Emperor was a little embarrassed. Zhen just didn't expect that there would be a second woman like General Fei Hong in this world. Back then, General Fei Hong was already 1 in 10,000. It was a pity that such a talent had fallen. Now, such a lucky general had appeared. Who wouldn't say that the heavens were blessing the Dawei? Aijia has already told you, the Empress Dowager said softly. Don't underestimate women. There are millions of women in Dawei. You don't know that there will be a third and a fourth General Fei Hong. Imperial Mother is right. Marquis Wu is a pure and honest person. Such a good official can only be found by chance. Since your Majesty has met her, you must recruit her. This time, she took back Zhou Chuan and made a great contribution. The He family doesn't have any background. Has your Majesty thought about how to reward Marquis Wu? Hearing this, Zhaokong Emperor smiled and said, Imperial Mother doesn't need to worry about this. Zhen has already thought about it. When she returns to the court, Zhen will bestow her the title of a true general. From then on, she will leave her mark in the history of Dawei, just like General Fei Hong. Chapter 264. After Lixia was the Spring Festival. After the Spring Festival, the weather grew hotter and hotter, and it was almost the Dragon Boat Festival. Marquis Wu led the Fuyue army to retake Jiuquan. Reports of victory came one after another, and the 100,000 Yichuo soldiers were routed. The remnants fled west and were completely wiped out by the Fuyue army. At this point, Hien had led the army for nearly 3 months, winning the desert and retaking Jiuquan. The people of Jiuquan cheered every day, celebrating this hard-won victory. No one in the Fuyue army dared to look down on this young marquis. She had used victory to prove her bravery and intelligence. Hien sat in his room, taking inventory of the spoils of war. In this final great victory, they had captured many prisoners and gained many spoils. A deputy general walked in and respectfully said, My lord, the Jiuquan city lord wishes for you to stay until after the Dragon Boat Festival. The Yichuo soldiers of Jiuquan had no chance to counterattack. Originally, she had planned to immediately return to the capital after taking care of matters here. However, most likely out of gratitude to the Fuyue army for driving away the Yichuo bandits, the people hoped that they could stay for a few more days. This was especially true for that female general. On the battlefield, she was awe-inspiring and intimidating, but she was exceptionally patient and pleasant to the common people. Hien asked, How many more days until the Dragon Boat Festival? 5 more days, the deputy general replied. Hien fell silent. Fine. After the Dragon Boat Festival, we will immediately depart. The people who had just experienced the chaos of war needed a bit of hope. If they stayed, they might be able to gain strength and better face the future that was about to begin anew. Other than fighting, this was the only thing she could do for the people here. The interior of the room was simple and clean. When the Yichuo soldiers had occupied Jiuquan, they had pillaged and burned everything of value. Even half of the wall of the room she was currently living in had been scorched. Hien gazed at the map on the table and sighed almost imperceptibly. In the end, they had retaken Jiuquan. Yunzi and Ji Commandery still had not sent back news, but news from Pingjiang had arrived. It seemed that the situation was going well. The reason Jiuquan was able to win so quickly was because she had led the army to quell the rebellion in the western Chang. Mo County was similar to Jiuquan in terms of geography, and the Fuyue army had once stayed in Mo County, which was why she was able to seize it so easily. He wondered how Yin He and Xiao Ju were doing. Just as she was thinking, someone came in from outside. It was actually Wang Ba. Wang Ba took out a letter from his bosom and said, "There's a letter from G County." With his brothers dying in battle one after another, Wang Ba had become much calmer. It was hard to see the domineering and arrogant manner he used to have in the Liang province guards. Ian took the letter and opened it eagerly. The last time G County sent a letter, they only knew that the plague was not optimistic. After such a long time, they did not know how they were doing. The letter was not long, only a few words. As Ian read it, his expression became serious. Wang Ba noticed something was wrong with her expression and asked, "What's wrong? Are those Yudo difficult to deal with?" Ian shook her head. Something happened to Yin He. The letter was written by He Yin. Although it only mentioned a few sentences, every sentence made He Yin tremble with fear. G County had been in a stalemate with the Yudo for the past few months, but it was generally good. The only one who was not good was Yin He. The letter said that he had been poisoned with an incurable poison from a Yudo. It was said that Jiuquan had been taken back. Yunzi and Bingjiang were not in the same direction as G County. The only place that was slightly closer was Jiuquan, and he said that he did not have much time left. He was afraid that there would be no one to lead the army after he left, so he asked Yin to come and help. At the end of the letter, he even had the mood to tease him. He only said that when Yin asked for help in the Rundu, he led the army and rushed over. Now, he treated it as returning the favor of the Rundu. Although he still had the mood to joke, Yin knew that the situation would not be good. Lin Shuanghe followed Lin Shuanghe to G County. If it was a normal poison, how could Lin Shuanghe not be able to cure it? Yin's letter said that he did not have much time left. She suddenly stood up. Wang Ba asked, "What are you going to do?" "Pass down the order. I can't wait until after the Dragon Boat Festival. Today, I will prepare the army and set off tomorrow to G County." The grass and trees were lush in summer. After a night of rain, the soil was moist and had a fishy smell. By the river, a man in hemp clothes was crushing the herbs in front of him and carefully mixing a few herbs together. "Dr. Lin, you've been busy the whole night. Hurry up and get some rest," a soldier said as he passed by. Lin Shuanghe raised his head, revealing his unshaven face. He looked very haggard. Because he had been busy the whole night, his eyes were bloodshot. At first glance, it was quite scary. He raised his head and squinted his eyes because of the sunlight. After a while, he shook his head and said in a hoarse voice, "No." The patrolling soldiers were puzzled. They did not know what was wrong with Dr. Lin. A few days ago, he had been preparing some herbs day and night. Logically speaking, now that the plague had been quelled, he did not need to work so hard. However, they did not know why he was in such a hurry. However, Lin Shuanghe did not listen. There was nothing he could do. He could only shake his head and leave. Lin Shuanghe lowered his head and looked at the herbs in the jar. Almost 2 months had passed. He did not develop an antidote. What was worse was that Yin He's poison was getting deeper and deeper. He had already started to vomit blood. The herbs he found could only temporarily make Yin He look less haggard. This was to prevent the Yin army from finding out. The poison in the wound had already entered his organs. Lin Shuanghe was very clear that Yin He did not have much time left. He worked day and night to find solution. However, no matter how hard he tried, Yin He's poison was useless. He had to admit that he was powerless. It was probably because in the past, although he was the white-shirt divine physician, he treated women's medicine. Most of the women's medicine did not have to worry about their lives. In life, the most important thing was life and death. As long as one was alive, there was no despair. But now, he had to watch helplessly as his friend approached death with each passing day. As a doctor, he was at a loss of what to do. Lin Shuanghe lowered his head and pounded the herbs. He muttered, "Faster, faster." The juices of the herbs in the jar splattered everywhere. Some of them splashed onto his face. There was a bitter fragrance. As he pounded, a huge sense of powerlessness and sorrow swept over him. He stopped what he was doing. Suddenly, his eyes turned red. He had never wanted to improve his medical skills as much as he did now. If he improved a little more, he would be able to save Yin He. He would not have to do such trivial things like now. However, the people around him did not know that every time their general fought, he paid the price with his life. Lin Shuanghe stood up and washed his hands by the river. He paused for a while and walked towards Yanhe's tent. There was a suppressed cough. The moment Lin Shuanghe opened the tent curtain, he saw He wiping the blood from the corner of his lips. "You!" he screamed in shock. "Lower your voice." Yanhe shook his head. "Don't let others see." Lin Shuanghe put down the tent curtain. He took a few steps forward and grabbed Yanhe's wrist to check his pulse. Yanhe quietly allowed him to do so. After a while, Lin Shuanghe put down his hand. His lips trembled as he looked at him. Yanhe asked, "How much longer do I have?" Lin Shuanghe did not answer him. "Looks like it's within these few days." Yanhe smiled. There was some unwillingness in his smile, but it also seemed like he was relieved. "Based on the time that I sent the letter to Hien, she should be here in a few days. The timing is just right. I don't know if I can meet her again." "No," Lin Shuanghe instinctively said. "I can still make the antidote. Wait for me. I can definitely do it. Moreover, those Yudo must have the antidote. As long as we find them, we will definitely get the antidote. You are still as stupid as before. Even if you have never fought in a war, you should have some brains." Yanhe said disdainfully, "Those Yudo saw me being shot by the arrow with their own eyes. It was not easy for them to get rid of me. Why would they hand over the antidote? Believe it or not, even if I catch their general now and use their general's life to exchange for the antidote, they will not hand over the antidote. There is only one possibility. If I am willing to surrender and be controlled by them, I may be lucky enough to keep my life. However, the men of the Yin family will not do such a thing." A general of the Guide army. Yanhe smiled. "Even if they lose this war, they will not suffer any losses. And you?" Yanhe frowned and looked at him. "If you can make the antidote, would you wait until now? Forget it. You are just a doctor, not the king of hell. How can you decide a person's life and death? You don't have to think too highly of yourself. You should just keep your lowly life and wait for Marquis Wu to come and save it." Lin Shuanghe's expression was pained. Although he and Yanhe used to quarrel and dislike each other, they were still classmates who grew up together. Although he hated Yanhe for being arrogant and aggressive, and Yanhe also looked down on him for being ignorant and incompetent, after so many years, they could still be considered as friends. "You don't have to look so sad." Yanhe looked at his expression as if he was disgusted. "As doctors, aren't you used to seeing life and death? Why are you not as open-minded as me? Why are you feeling so sad? After a few decades, you still have to come down and accompany me. I will go and find that cross-dressing classmate to spar." Why was he still thinking about sparring at this time? Lin Shuanghe could not help but laugh. After laughing, he felt even sadder. After a moment of silence, he asked, "Have you ever thought about what will happen to Madame and Mu Xiao in the future?" Yanhe's originally carefree expression suddenly froze. He thought of the woman who always smiled gently and looked forward to him before she left. She was so considerate. After knowing about his news, she would probably cry. She would probably be very sad. And he suddenly became sad too. It was as if there was a lump of wet cotton in his chest, making him feel suffocated and depressed. After a long time, he slowly opened his mouth. "Before I left, I promised Qingxiu that I would try my best to go back and see Mu Xia. However, it seems that I have to go back on my words." He lowered his head and laughed self-mockingly. "Qingxiu hates people who go back on their words. If I don't go back, she will probably be angry. Lin Shuanghe, if you go back and see her, please tell her that I didn't do it on purpose. I have a bad temper. On the surface, everyone respects me, but I know that in reality, they don't like me. Just like you, Xiao Huaijin, and He Yin. I am not good as a friend, but I am good as a husband. I originally wanted to continue working hard and be the best father in Shuo City, but..." His voice was very low. "There is no more chance." Lin Shuanghe wanted to say something, but when he opened his mouth, he did not know what to say. "I originally thought that if Chengxiu gave birth to a daughter, she would be called Mu Xia. If it was a son, he would be called Liangjiang. But now that I think about it, if it was a son, he could also be called Mu Xia. I originally wanted to watch her grow up with my own eyes. When she is older, I will teach her that a good general does not fear death, and a martyr does not destroy his integrity to survive. There is no other way now, but I feel that there is nothing better than this to teach her. In the future, when she grows up and knows that her father died on the battlefield, I will not have to teach her. She will understand on her own. When he talked about the unborn Muxia, his gaze finally softened. It was filled with longing and tenderness. Lin Shuanghe closed his eyes. These last words were like countless sharp needles stabbing into his heart at the same time. You don't have to be sad for me, and you don't have to feel heartache for me. A general dying on the battlefield is the best ending. Although I have regrets, I do not regret it. Yinny stood up and walked out of the tent. He looked into the distance, in the direction of the city gate tower. Everyone who goes to the battlefield is prepared to die here. There's still a few more days, he said. Let's continue and look forward. When Yin arrived at Ji County, he saw a completely different Lin Shuanghe from the past. The elegant young master who always wore a white robe and a folding fan, who always had a graceful demeanor, was haggard. His clothes were stained with blood and mud. His face looked like it had not been washed for a few days. His beard was unkempt. He was so dispirited that Yin almost did not recognize him at first glance. Brother Lin. She jumped off the horse and went forward to ask. You came. Lin Shuang's dim eyes finally showed a bit of life. He muttered, come and see Yin. He died on the battlefield. He was poisoned with an incurable poison. He knew that intense activity would cause the poison to spread faster and deeper, but because of the war, he was unwilling to stop. He was like a candle that only had one piece left. He burned with all his might and finally burned himself out. Before he died, he had just won a battle. The young general was lying in the tent. The stains on his face had been wiped clean. His hair was tied up high like it was when he was young. The silver spear was placed at his side. She could vaguely see his former high-spirited appearance. But when Yin walked over, he would no longer be angry and arrogant as he challenged her to a duel. He knew that he did not have much time left. Before he left, he told me to give these to you. Lin Shuanghe handed the box to Yin. Yin opened it and saw that it was filled with written documents. He had counted all of the battle situation and military horses in Ji County. He had written everything down so that when Yin came here, he would not be confused. He had done everything very well. Even at the last moment of his life, he was still thinking about this battle. How is Ji County? Yin asked. Lin Shuanghe shook his head. His voice was low. After he left, the morale of the Yin army was in chaos. The Yudo took this opportunity to attack twice. Without the Yin army was like a pile of scattered sand. Yin said it was not the Yin army's fault. Ji County's location was easy to defend and hard to attack. They had the advantage. If he wanted to attack, it was already very difficult. Also, he used such a despicable method. Then now I want to see the deputy general of the Yin army now. We will discuss this. Yin replied. Lin Shuanghe nodded silently. Yin turned to leave. Suddenly, he thought of something. He stopped and turned back to look at Lin Shuanghe. Brother Lin. Her voice was calm, and her gaze seemed to have the power to soothe people's hearts. It was not your fault that you did not save Yin. With one sentence, Lin Shuanghe finally had an outlet to vent the self-blame and guilt that he had been feeling for the past few days. No, his voice was trembling. For the first time, he showed a weak expression in front of Yin. I did not find the antidote. After Yin left, his subordinates finally got to know that Yin was poisoned. They blamed him for not being able to find the antidote, even though he was the so-called godly doctor and couldn't save their general. Countless accusations and curses constantly filled his ears. Even Lin Shuanghe would wake up from nightmares at night. The woman in red armor looked at him and said gently, "You are a doctor, not a god. You can only save people. You cannot decide life and death." And he was poisoned by Yudo. If you want to avenge him, you have to win this battle. You have to pull yourself together, Dr. Lin. She changed the way she addressed him. I need your help. Ji County needs you. In a tent, Yin's deputy general, Chun Chung, blurted out. What did you say? Surrender? It's a fake surrender. He Yin said, since Yudo already knows that Generals Yin is not here, the Yin army is like a group of dragons without a leader. These few days, they will definitely take advantage of the victory to attack. Instead of being restrained by them, it is better to pretend to surrender. After our people enter the city, the Fuyue army and Yin army will hold the rear and take advantage of the chaos to break through the city gates. When General Yin is here, we have always faced the Yudo head-on. The Yin army will never surrender, even if it is a fake. Chen Sheng refuted immediately. Yin was not angry. He only looked at him calmly. You have stayed here for so long and should be very clear about the terrain of Ji County. If you do not break through the city gates and continue to camp outside the city, you will only be wasting your energy. And he led you to face the Yudo head-on and won many times. You killed many Yudo, but what happened in the end? What happened in the end? Ji County City is still occupied by the Yudo. If you cannot enter the city, you cannot win this battle. What do you know? Chun Cheng was agitated. You do not understand Generals Yin at all. You and that Lin Shuanghe are in cahoots. You're just a figurehead. You will only make things worse. Yin He's death was a painful blow to the Yin army. They hated Lin Shuanghe for not telling the truth earlier. However, they knew nothing about Yin He's efforts. He Yan's eyes turned cold. The deputy general of the Fuyue army beside him reprimanded. What figurehead? Sir, he just led his troops to reclaim Jiuquan and won the battle. What right do you have to look down on him? The Yin army had never seen He Yan's abilities on the battlefield. However, the Fuyue army had seen it clearly. If He Yan was just a figurehead, then there were not many generals in Dawei who could live up to their name. I am not discussing with you, He Yan said coldly. I'm giving you an order. If you do not listen and disobey my orders, what will happen to you? She pulled out the long sword at her waist. The light of the sword was as cold as ice. You can try. You, Chun Cheng gritted his teeth. You are leading the Fuyue army, not the Yin army. The leader of the Yin army is only the General's Yin. What right do you have to order us around? Because your general gave me the commander's seal. Because your general personally asked me to lead your troops. She waved her hand, and the commander's seal appeared in everyone's eyes. Now, the woman's eyes were clear and calm. Do you have any objections? With the commander's seal in hand, she could command the Yin army. Even if Chun Cheng was extremely unwilling, he could not say anything now. He gritted his teeth and said, No. I know you are not convinced, He Yin said, so I will personally lead the vanguard troops who pretended to surrender. Chun Cheng was stunned. The troops that entered the city first were undoubtedly in the most danger. They were like sheep in a tiger's den. Dawei's troops were all outside the city. They were surrounded by Yudo troops. If the Yudo suddenly changed their minds and killed them, their troops would be sent to their deaths. Are you sure? Chun Cheng asked suspiciously. Ian glanced at him. For some reason, Chun Cheng felt his face heat up. The woman's voice was calm and calm. Leading the troops is something that every general will do. It is not just your general's Yin. Also, she said, Dr. Lin was also following your general's orders. If you want to push all the blame onto a doctor and ignore the Wutuo, people who really killed your general, then I have nothing to say. It's just that her voice carried a hint of mockery. If your general sees this scene, he will probably be very disappointed in the troops he single-handedly built. Chun Cheng wanted to say something, but the woman ignored him and left the tent. He Yan was stunned when she left the tent. Lin Shuanghe stood outside the tent and looked at her in a daze. It seemed that he had heard everything she said inside. It didn't matter if he heard it. That was what she thought anyway. Thank you. After a moment of silence, Lin Shuanghe took the initiative to speak. He smiled bitterly. But by speaking up for me like this, you have implicated them. I'm just speaking the truth. He Yan looked into the distance. You followed Yin He here. Along the way, you put down the plague and treated the wounded soldiers. You have put your head on your belt. But she smiled. You don't have to hate them. They're just too sad and think wrongly. As time passes, they will understand. I don't hate them. Lin Shuanghe took a deep breath and changed the topic. I just heard you say that you want to pretend to surrender. The The Fuyua army's camp is not close to here. Those Yudo probably haven't noticed our arrival. They're confident. If we surrender now, they will believe us and open the gate. Only by opening the gate, we will have the chance to take down all the Yudo. Is the vanguard that entered the city gate very dangerous? The wind blew, and the woman's long hair fluttered gently. Her voice was firm and calm, without any hesitation. The battlefield is dangerous, she said. I'm not afraid of danger. Chapter 265. On the first day of the 6th month, the tightly shut city gates of Ji County finally opened. 2,000 Dawei soldiers were the first to enter the city and surrender to the Yudo soldiers. After the death of Guide Lieutenant General Yin He, the remaining Yin family army was like a sheet of loose sand. They were unable to deal with the attacks launched by the Yudo. Now that they had lost and had no reinforcements, it was only a matter of time before they surrendered. The Yudo did not suspect anything. The Yudo soldiers on both sides of the city gates all held their blades and mocked the weakness of the Dawei soldiers. Yin was hiding in the ranks of the Dawei soldiers. Her face was covered in dust, and her original appearance could not be seen. She was mixed in with the troops. These 2,000 people were all personally selected by Yin. The majority of them were from the Fuyua army. There was no other reason. She had not gotten used to the Yin family army yet. The Fuyua army had fought alongside her for a period of time and had a tacit understanding. This time, entering the city would be very dangerous. Nothing could go wrong. After Yin He's death, the only person who had a say in the Yin family army was his lieutenant, Chun Chung. At the end of the road, Yudo General Shajite saw Chun Chung walk forward and laughed. Dawei is a coward. That's all there is to it. Chun Chung lowered his head and asked, "If my army surrenders to the Yudo, can you let my soldiers live?" Of course, of course. Shajite was very muscular and mocked. "Since you have surrendered to the Yudo, from now on, you are the Yudo. We will not attack our own people." Then, Sir Shajite, please open the city gates and accept Dawei's surrender, Chun Chung replied. Shajite's eyes flashed. Opening the city gates is a small matter. However, the surrendered soldiers must be like you. He pointed at the troops, put down their weapons and tie their hands. That is the only way. He still did not trust Dawei. Chun Chung said, "That is not a problem." He said, "Please allow me to send someone back to explain this matter." Saget, all right. Chun Chung walked to the side of the soldier and whispered a few words into his ear. The soldier nodded and turned to walk towards the city gate. Halfway through, a Yudo standing at the side suddenly knocked an arrow and shot it through the chest of the soldier, who went back to pass the order. The soldier didn't even have time to cry out before he fell to the ground and stopped moving. Chun Chung was furious. "What's going on? Didn't you tell him to go back and pass on the order? You're all captives now. How dare you raise conditions with us?" The Yudo who was holding his bow said with disdain, "If you spout any more nonsense, I'll kill you as well." Shardit smiled and said, "Why are you angry? He's just an ordinary soldier. Can't you just send another person?" Their attitude was clearly to provoke Dawei soldiers. Yin knew that something was wrong. Before he could say anything, a soldier from a Yin family charged towards a Yudo in front of him and shouted, "I'd rather die than be humiliated. Let's fight them to the death." Yin sighed in his heart. The style of a general would affect the actions of the entire army. Yin He was direct and courageous, and the soldiers under him were the same. They could not be provoked. Now, all their previous preparations were useless. But so what? The soldiers in front of him had already exchanged blows with the Yudo. Before they entered the city, they had already taken off their weapons. Now, they could only snatch the blades from the enemy's hands with their bare hands. It was tragic and dangerous. Yin kicked away the Yudo that was charging towards him and snatched the long blade from his hand. He shouted, "Boys, follow me." On the battlefield outside Yinzi city, the Golden Cavalry was covered in blood. The Yudo soldiers outside the city were beaten until they covered their heads and ran away like rats. The reason why the Killer General was called the Killer General the Nine Flags Battalion was called the Nine Flags Battalion, and the Nanfu soldiers were called the Nanfu soldiers because those who had fought with them had mostly died on the battlefield. Bystanders could only hear from the mouths of those who had escaped with their lives that this army was invincible. But when they actually faced them on the battlefield, they would know that the rumors were not even 1/10 of their strength. Among the thousands of soldiers and horses, the black-armored youth with a long sword was like an emissary from hell. His sword was as cold and indifferent as his gaze. His jade-like appearance brought with it endless killing intent. And he wasn't fighting alone. The cavalry behind him was like his shield, but also like his spear, making this army seem invincible and intimidating at first glance. The soldiers of one person were like wolves and tigers, like wind and rain, like thunder and lightning. They shook the world and shocked the world. This was a crucial battle and also the final battle to besiege the city. As long as they won this battle, they would be able to take back Yunzi. The rest was just to clean up the mess. But for this battle, Xiao Ju and the Nanfu soldiers had been waiting for a long time. The Yudo and Yunzi were not willing to open the city gates to face the Nanfu soldiers. They were afraid of the reputation of the Nanfu soldiers and the Nine Flags Battalion. They still had reserves in the city of Yunzi, but the Great Way soldiers and horses stationed outside the city would run out of rations one day. Xiao Ju ordered people to carry rations outside the city every day. He purposely let the Yudo who came to investigate in secret see him. 1 or 2 days was fine, but after a long time, the Yudo would also become suspicious. Seeing that the Dowei soldiers had sufficient rations and high morale, they could not help but be alarmed and fearful. But that was not all. Long before coming to Yunzi, Xiao Ju had already arranged for a few skilled craftsmen in the South House army to follow them. After arriving at Yunzi, he sent the army and the craftsmen to secretly dig a tunnel that led to Yunzi city. He also ordered people to use crossbows to shoot stone arrows into the city to harass the Yudo. After a long time, the Yudo were on tenterhooks. Even though their leader ordered them not to leave the city, their morale was shaken. The battle of wits between generals was sometimes just a competition of who could keep their cool. Whoever could not keep their cool first would lose. The Yudo that occupied Yunzi fell for Xiao Ju's psychological trick. This morning, they went out of the city to fight the Nanfu soldiers. After a long period of preparation, the victory of this battle was a matter of course. Tens of thousands of enemy soldiers were captured, and numerous war horses and weapons were obtained. The remaining small portion of Yudo fled in panic. At this point, the situation in Yunzi was set. It was rare for the Nanfu soldiers to celebrate in the city. From spring to autumn, close to half a year had passed. Although it looked easy, only they knew that the days were tough. Yunzi was near the ocean, and the nights were humid. Many soldiers had red rashes on their bodies, and once night fell, they would feel unbearably itchy. There was also army grain, which was not enough for them to eat. The buckets of white rice that the Yudo saw every day were actually the same buckets. "We can finally go home." A slightly younger Nanfu soldier grinned. "I've spent enough time in Yunzi, so I'm going back to the capital." Chiwu walked past him and wanted to scold him. However, when the words reached his mouth, he did not say anything. Instead, he let out a smile. To be able to go home alive, just hearing about it made one happy. Within the tent, the military doctor was treating the injuries of the main general. The young man's shirt was pulled down to his shoulders, and his chest was wrapped in a thick cloth. Since he was the commander of the Right Army, he was naturally the target of all the attacks from the Yudo. He was injured in the end. However, the black armor covered his wound, so no one saw him bleeding. Hence, people always thought that General Fengyun would not be injured. "Commander, don't do anything too serious these few days," the white-bearded old military doctor reminded. "Although the arrow did not hit any vital parts, the wound is very deep. It's best to rest for a few days to prevent any problems in the future." Xiao Ju pulled his outer robe over his wound and nodded, "Thank you." Just as the old military doctor left, someone came in. It was Fei Nu. He held a letter in his hand and walked over quickly. He had a rare, anxious expression. Young master, there's a letter from G County. G County was far away from Yunzi. When the letter was sent, a few days had already passed. The last time they received a letter from G County, it was when they learned of Yanhee's death. Jiuquan had already received the news that G County had lost its main general. Hien had led the Fuyue army to help. This time, the letter was sent after Hien had arrived at G County. Fei Nu passed the letter to Xiao Ju. His expression was ugly. Although he did not open the letter, he had already heard the news from the person who delivered the letter. It was not good news. G County was easy to defend and hard to attack. The Yin army had lost their main general, and their morale was not stable. If they did not end the war quickly, it would only be disadvantageous to the Wei. Hien brought 2,000 soldiers and horses and pretended to surrender to enter the city in an attempt to break through the Yudo's formation. When the city was in chaos, he would take the opportunity to open the city gates and let the Fuyue army and the rest of the Yin army work together to kill the Yudo. There were no problems with the plan. Unfortunately, during the execution of the plan, one of the Yin army soldiers could not resist the provocation of the Yudo and attacked. The plan was disrupted. Hien led the Dalwei soldiers to fight with the Yudo. Although they opened the city gates and won the battle, Hien was seriously injured and his situation was not good. Xiao Ju stared at the letter in front of him. The letter was written by Lin Shuanghe. The handwriting was very messy. It could be seen that when he wrote the letter, the situation was very urgent. Although the higher-ups did not say how bad the situation was, it was easy to imagine. 2,000 soldiers entered the city. If they attacked first, it would be like a sheep entering a tiger's den. They did not have any weapons and were already at a disadvantage. Furthermore, it was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. What was more serious was that although they won the battle, once the Yudo knew that their general was injured, they would definitely counterattack. Lin Shuanghe did not understand the situation of the battle. The letter was also unclear. He did not know what the situation was like. Fei Nu looked at Xiao Ju's expression. Honestly speaking, this letter came at the wrong time. The battle at Yunzi only needed to be wrapped up. This letter would definitely cause Xiao Ju to panic. But Yunzi and G County were not in the same direction. Even if they turned around and went to G County to help, they would not be able to make it in time. They could only watch helplessly. How difficult was that? Young master, should we go to G County? No need. Xiao Ju interrupted him. Fei Nu did not dare to speak. Xiao Ju stood up and walked out of the tent. Outside, the west wind blew against his face. It was almost the beginning of autumn. All the heat in the night had faded away, leaving only the cold air. In the distance, the sea was vast and the sound of the waves was fierce. The clear moon reflected in the clouds and dyed the sea white. The night at the border had always been like this. The sun was cold and the grass was short. The moon was bitter and white. But what was the difference between the moonlight in the desert and the moonlight by the sea? There was a faint pain in his chest. He did not know if it was a wound or something else. He looked up and quietly looked at the cold moon in the sky. A woman's clear voice floated in his ears. I want you to promise me that if there is news, no matter what it is, do what you have to do. Do not affect the overall situation. Do not stop. Continue to move forward. Continue to move forward. After a while, he retracted his gaze and turned to walk in the direction of the tent. The deputy general went forward and asked hesitantly, Commander-in-Chief, next, after daybreak, head north to clean up the remaining soldiers, he said. The summer heat in Jiang was finally blown away by the autumn wind and rain. In the morning, under the parasol tree outside the palace hall, a thick layer of golden leaves fell into the pond. Occasionally, fish swam to the surface of the water and lightly poked at the leaves before quickly swimming away. Only the ripples created by the fish's tails were left. Mu Hongjin walked into the courtyard. A servant said, Your Highness, Lord Shui is here. Shui Yuji walked in from outside. He had lost a lot of weight over the past few days and looked more energetic than before. When Yudo invaded Da Wei's territory, Jiang City's army was not strong. Previously, because of Xiao Ju and Hien, they won despite being outnumbered. Now, Xiaoju and Heyin had gone to their respective battlefields. Although Jiang City was safe now, the previous incident was a lesson. After the end of the year, Cui Yuezhi stayed in the training field every day to train Jiang City's army. He wanted to be strong and confident when facing the enemy if they came one day. He bowed to Mu Hongjin and handed her a scroll. "Your Highness, this is the battle report from Ji County in Yunzi." Mu Hongjin reached out and took it. She had also aged a little, but now she did not let the servant pull out the new white hair on her head every day. Therefore, there were specks of white in her hair. However, she did not care. Mu Xiaolu had gradually grown up, and Jiang City would be handed over to the new princess sooner or later. Everyone would grow old, and growing old shouldn't be such a scary thing. She opened the scroll and looked at the words on it for a long time. Then, she closed the scroll and sighed. Jiuquan and Yunzi have been taken back. Everything is fine in Bingjiang. There's also good news from Ji County. "Your Highness, are you worried about Missy?" Cui Yuezhi asked. Even so, sometimes when he spoke or did something, he would subconsciously look for that delicate figure. Countless nights, he would wake up from his dreams. He would always remember that day when Luo looked at him. There was no resentment, only doubt and confusion. Ian was right. He was indeed wrong. Therefore, from then on, until now, he had spent more time training the Runda City army. The mistake he made could not be made up for. The only thing he could do was to prevent such a mistake from happening again. Lordly has seen it now. They have survived and are living well, Zhao Shiming said. When Yin saved these women, everyone thought that she was just wasting her energy. Because women who had been humiliated by the enemy, even if they were lucky enough to survive, they would not be able to fight against the eyes of the world. The criticism and ridicule behind their backs would be the last straw that broke their backs. Leaving this world was their choice sooner or later. Before Yin left, she told Zhao Shiming how to settle these women. She even left a sum of money for herself. She was sincerely thinking for these women. And now, these women did not let her down. Li Kuang lowered his head and laughed self-deprecatingly. "I'm not as good as her. How many people in this world can be compared to Xiao He?" Zhao Shiming stroked his beard. "I hope that Xiao He can turn misfortune into fortune in Ji County. If she is here, these women will have a place to belong in their hearts." Zhao Shiming looked at the distant sky. A group of autumn geese flew by. He looked for a while and said in a low voice, "I hope so." Chapter 266. A long time had passed. After the spring and the mid-autumn, the wind was getting colder and colder. Winter was coming. Yudo had been completely defeated. In the next 10 years, it would be impossible for him to have any thoughts about Dawei. Jiuquan, Ji County, Yunzi, and Bingjiang sent the news back to Shuo, and countless people celebrated. Amidst the excitement and joy, there were also some sad events. For example, the death of Lieutenant General Guide Yin Nanguang in battle. When the news reached Shuo and the Yin family, Yin He's mother fainted on the spot, and his wife, Xia Chengxiu, went into labor early. Probably because she was heartbroken, the labor was extremely dangerous, and even the midwives were helpless. At the moment of life and death, Lin Shuang's father, Lin Mu, rushed over with his female disciple and personally helped Xia Qingxiu deliver the baby. Everyone in the Yin family gathered outside the delivery room, and when they heard the weak voice of the woman inside and saw the basin of blood being carried out, they couldn't help but be shocked. Master Yin, who had never believed in Buddhism, went to his ancestral hall and knelt on the ground to pray for the safety of the mother and son. In the room, Xia Qingxiu's forehead was covered in sweat, and her expression was pained. She could only feel the strength in her body slowly disappearing. Even as she was dying, she could still feel the pain in her heart. The pain in her heart was greater than all the pain in front of her, and it made it difficult for her to even breathe. And he had died in battle. As the wife of a general, from the day she married Yin He, she should have been prepared for this day. War was cruel, and the battlefield was constantly changing. No one could guarantee that they would be the one to survive. Xia Qingxiu had thought countless times that since she had decided to become his wife, when the day came, she should be calm and magnanimous. Even if her heart was filled with unwillingness, she should be able to withstand the hardships on her face. However, when the day came, she realized that she was weak. She was weaker than she thought. In the eyes of outsiders, that man who was fierce, bad-tempered, and liked to provoke her had never said a harsh word to her. Ever since they got married, Xia Qingxiu was grateful to the heavens. This marriage was indeed a happy one that she had never imagined. However, the good things in the world were not firm, and the colorful clouds scattered easily. It was because it was too perfect that it was so short. While she was in a daze, she seemed to see a familiar figure in front of her. It was Yanhe in his silver robe and long spear. He seemed to have returned from the outside and was covered in dust. His eyes were fixed on her. There was a familiar smile on his lips. It was a little proud and a little boastful. Just like in the past, he had returned after winning a battle. Yanhe extended a hand towards him. Xia Qingxiu stared at him in a daze, subconsciously wanting to place her hand in his. The female doctor beside her saw her expression and was shocked. She shouted, "Madam Yin, hold on. Don't fall asleep. Don't be discouraged." Then she looked at the curtain and said anxiously, "Master, Madam Yin can't hold on." Lin Mu's heart tightened behind the curtain. He couldn't care about anything else and shouted, "Madam Yin, think about the child in your belly. Don't you want to see what he looks like? Don't you want to be with him as he grows up? Madam Yin, even if it's for your child, you have to be strong." Child? It was as if a clear hole was torn open in the chaos. Child. Muxia. She suddenly opened her eyes. This was her and Yanhe's child. Before Yanhe left, he had sincerely apologized to her belly for not being able to stay by her side. He hoped that it would be a young lady, but if it was a young master, he would love it just as much. Just as he had guessed countless times what the child would look like in the future, Xia Qingxiu had also described the child's features many times. If he was a young master, he would look like Yanhe, with thick eyebrows, big eyes, and high spirits. If he was a young lady, he would be like her, gentle, delicate, obedient, and cute. She hadn't even seen the child. How could she let go and leave? She couldn't. Xia Qingxiu suddenly sobered up. She couldn't. At least, she couldn't wallow in her sorrow now. She was Yanhe's wife. She was also his mother. Wah! A baby's cry sounded in the courtyard of the Yin family. Master Yin, who was praying in the ancestral hall with his hands clasped together, was stunned. Then tears flowed down his face. The female doctor smiled and said, "Congratulations, Madam Yin, it's a young master." Lin Mu, who was behind the curtain, suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. When the news from Ji County came, he also felt sad for Yanhe. Lin Shuanghe couldn't save Yanhe, but at least he saved his child. Xia Qingxiu was exhausted. Her sweat-soaked hair stuck to her cheeks. In a daze, she saw Yanhe again. The man smiled warmly, as if he was a little apologetic. He said to her, "I'm sorry." Xia Qingxiu's tears gushed out. She reached out and tried to grab the person in front of her, but he smiled. "Qingxiu, I'm leaving." Nan Guang. The man turned around and strode forward. His back was elegant and neat. As he walked, his figure completely disappeared from her sight. When Xia Qingxiu gave birth to her son, Xiao Ju returned to the capital with the Nanfu army. Emperor Zhao Kong was very happy and rewarded her countless times. The courtiers secretly thought that the new emperor wanted to put General Feng Yun in an important position. Now that Su Jingfu was no longer around, the Xiao family Indo Wei would rise again in the future. The courtiers had their own thoughts, but the common people didn't think so much. They only thought that General Feng Yun was General Feng Yun. Yunzi was in danger, but she still won. Not long after Xiao Ju returned to the capital, General Hui also led his army back from Bingjiang. At this point, only the Fuyue army led by He Yin and the Yin family army had not returned. However, although they hadn't returned, everyone knew that it was only a matter of time. After all, Jiuquan and Ji County had already been recovered. Calculating the time, they should be on their way back to the capital. He Yinsheng woke up even earlier every day. Other than going to school, he would wake up before dawn and climb up Dongwang Mountain to chop firewood. He Yinsheng didn't have to work so hard to make a living now. He chopped firewood not for the sake of living, but to improve his skills. If one day his skills were better than He Yan's, then when He Yin went to the battlefield in the future, he could go with him. Every day after school, he would run to the Xiao family. Every day, when he saw Xiao Ju, the first thing he asked was, "Brother-in-law, is there any news about my sister?" Xiao Ju always shook her head and said no. No, what a depressing answer. Ji County won the battle, but He Yunxing also learned that He Yin was seriously injured during the battle. After that, there was no more news. Even if there was a message, it didn't explain He Yan's situation. He Yunsheng resisted telling He Sui about this. He Sui was old, and he was afraid that He Sui would be worried every day if she knew about this. However, He Yunsheng still hoped for good news every day. Not long after, Bai Rongwei also gave birth to a daughter. Xiao Jing was very happy. Because of the Xiao family's accident, Bai Rongwei's body became ill, and this pregnancy was especially difficult. Now that both mother and daughter were safe, it was a good thing. Cheng Li Su and Song Tao Tao came to visit Bai Rongwei with many gifts. Xiao family was very popular in Emperor Zhaokong's eyes, and the relatives of the past remembered their old relationship. Cheng Li Su asked the servants of the Xiao family to take care of the cloth and tonics sent by his mother. He looked around and didn't see Xiao Ju, so he asked Xiao Jing, "Eldest uncle, is little uncle not in the residence?" He hadn't seen Xiao Ju for a long time. Xiao Jing was startled. He should be in the ancestral hall at this time. Cheng Li Su stood up and said, "I'll go find him." Then he ran away. He had a close relationship with Xiao Ju, so Xiao Jing and Bai Rongwei were used to it. Song Tao Tao, on the other hand, waited until Cheng Li Su ran away and asked Bai Rongwei, "Young Mistress Xiao, is there any news about Lord He?" Bai Rongwei heard this and sighed, shaking her head. Song Tao Tao was a little disappointed. On the other hand, Cheng Li Su ran to the entrance of the ancestral hall. The weather was getting colder, the fallen leaves in the courtyard were falling, and a layer of frost had accumulated on the roof tiles. He tiptoed inside and saw a young man standing in front of the memorial tablet in the middle of the ancestral hall. His dark blue robe made him look cold and distant. His gaze was calm and peaceful as he looked at the memorial tablet. Cheng Li Su suddenly remembered a summer afternoon many years ago when the thunderstorm was endless. He was also like this. In order to chase a cat, he accidentally hid here and accidentally bumped into the heart of a cold and emotionless youth, the gentleness that was hard to see in the world. The young man's voice sounded, "Why are you hiding behind me?" Cheng Li Su was surprised that he had been discovered. He walked in obediently and called out, "Uncle." Xiao Ju didn't look at him. It was a habit he had since he was young. Whenever he felt uneasy or irritated, he would walk here and light 3 sticks of incense. After 3 sticks of incense, everything would go on as usual. His uneasiness and fear couldn't be seen by outsiders. Just like now, under the seemingly calm surface, there were turbulent waves. "Uncle, are you worried about Aunt?" Cheng Li Su asked. Xiao Ju was silent. After a long time, so long that Cheng Li Su thought Xiao Ju wouldn't answer him, Xiao Ju said, "Yes." Cheng Li Su looked at him. "I just want her to be safe and sound." Coming out of Bai Rongwei's room, Song Tao Tao felt a little depressed. She was also worried when she heard about He Yin. Even though she had been secretly distressed for a long time because of the fact that He Yin was a woman, but now, those were all things of the past. In all fairness, even if He Yin was a woman, she actually liked He Yin very much. Death was fair to everyone. That was why the battlefield was so cruel. When one truly realized the cruelty, one would begin to grow up. The biggest worries of a carefree young girl in the past were that her hairpin didn't look good today, and her new lipstick was too dull. Now, she finally understood the feeling of helplessness. Perhaps she was also beginning to grow up. A young man in green walked towards her. His features were delicate and arrogant, and he was somewhat similar to the cheerful and lively young girl. Song Tao Dao stopped in her tracks. Hey, she remembered this young man. He was He Yan's younger brother. His temperament was completely different from He Yan's, but the determination in his eyes were especially similar. He Yansheng also saw her. She seemed to be a young lady from a rich family that He Yan met in the Liang province guard. Perhaps she was a guest of the Xiao family. He came to the Xiao family today to inquire about He Yan. Of course, he didn't hear what he wanted. He forgot Song Tao Dao's name. He only nodded slightly as a greeting and was about to walk past. Hey, Song Tao Dao instinctively called out to him. He Yansheng stopped in his tracks and looked up. Miss, is there anything else? Song Tao Tao pursed her lips and thought for a moment before saying, Don't worry. Marquis Wuan will definitely return safely. He Yansheng was startled, as if he didn't expect her to say this. After a moment of silence, he said to her, Thank you. Then he turned and left. Song Tao Dao looked at his back. She didn't know if he was looking at the person walking away or at herself. She whispered to herself, She will definitely return. It was snowing all night. The fruits on the pomegranate tree in front of the window had turned red at some point. They fell on the branches, and the shadow of the tree was like a remnant of red. The little girl, Bai Gua, stood under the tree. Early in the morning, she was drooling as she looked at the biggest and reddest pomegranate on the branches. The second young master's courtyard was cold and cheerless. The most lively thing was this pomegranate tree. The biggest pomegranate was like a small lantern. It looked very sweet. Qing Mei walked past. Seeing Bai Guo's infatuated expression, she couldn't help but lightly knock on Bai Guo's head. Greedy, Bai Guo smacked her lips. Just as she was about to speak, she looked up and saw Xiao Ju walking out. She hurriedly said, Young master. Xiao Ju glanced at her. What's the matter? Bai Guo pointed at the tree. Look, the pomegranate has turned red. Xiao Ju turned his head to look. The fruits on the tree added a thin layer of color to the green, like a lamp burning in the night. It's so red. It must be very sweet. Bai Guo said as she bit her finger. Qing Mei couldn't help but whisper, The young master wants to leave the sweetest pomegranate for the young mistress. What are you looking at? Bai Guo explained in a low voice. I know. I just wanted to ask if the smallest one could be left for us. Her voice gradually trailed off. In the end, she didn't dare to finish her sentence. Xiao Ju walked to the side of the pomegranate tree. Suddenly, she recalled a time last year. There was a girl who stood under this pomegranate tree and tried her best to pick the pomegranates on the tree. Later on, the matters in the capital piled up like a mountain. She didn't have time to pick the biggest pomegranate, and it was already ripe on the branch. She regretted it for a long time. Now, the time was just right, but the person who picked the pomegranate had not returned. He casually picked up a stone under the tree and looked at the farthest tip of the tree. With a slight movement of his fingers, the stone flew towards the tip of the tree. The fiery red pomegranate that looked like a lantern fell into his palm. It was heavy and bright red. He withdrew his hand. At this time of the year, pomegranates should be placed in the well in the courtyard and soaked in cold water. This way, when He Yan returned, it would be just right. Xiao Ju was about to leave when Shi Wu ran in from outside. He was panting as he said, Young master, the Fuyue army has returned to the capital. Qing Mei and Bai Guo were stunned. Then they became happy. Just as they were about to speak, they raised their heads and felt a strong wind sweep past them. When they looked at the courtyard again, Xiao Ju was already gone. Only the pomegranate tree that bore fruit was more beautiful than the winter plum blossoms. The city gate was already filled with commoners who had rushed over after hearing the news. They blocked both sides of the street. Most of the people who came to welcome them were those whose family members had joined the army. Many women held their young children's hands and stood in the wind, carefully looking for familiar faces in the crowd. If they saw a family member who was still alive, they would ignore the situation and rush over to hug the person's head and cry. There were also old men who shakily came out with crutches. They looked at the crowd from head to toe until their eyes turned cold with disappointment. A war, countless families were torn apart. Separation and reunion, joy and tears, tragedy, and comedy, without exception, were played out one by one. When Xiao Ju arrived, the army had already passed through the city gate. The number of soldiers and horses that had set out before was now reduced by half. Everyone's face was filled with fatigue and joy. However, at the front, there was no familiar hardy figure riding on a horse. His gaze suddenly froze. When returning to the capital, the chief general who had performed meritorious deeds would always be at the front. There had never been an exception, but now there was no one. There was no sign of He Yin. That year, when He Yin was the General Fei Hong, he didn't see him when he returned to the capital. Later, He Yin joked with him, "Xiao Ju, one day, I will definitely let you see my heroic appearance when I return from a victorious battle." But now, from head to toe, there was no sign of her in the long line of soldiers and horses. For many years, perhaps since Xiao Zhongwu and Madame Xiao had passed away, he had never been at such a loss. For a moment, he didn't even know where and when he was. The bustling crowd seemed to be very far away from him. Some people walked by in front of him, but did not notice that this young man who seemed to have lost his soul was the Great Wei's right army commander-in-chief. They were so crowded that the pomegranate in his hand slipped out of his hand and rolled into the crowd without a trace. He seemed to have returned to that night when he was young. All of his calmness suddenly cracked. He was so panicked that he didn't know what to do. It seemed like a long time had passed, but also like not much time had passed. He seemed to understand what he had to do next. He turned around and then froze. There was a young woman leaning against the wall by the street. Just as he was about to ask someone to find a carriage, he saw a person standing on the steps. She was wearing a bright moonlight embroidered brocade robe. Standing in the snow, it seemed as if the snow was illuminated. "Xiao Ju." Ian waved at him. He chuckled and walked up to them. "Why are you free today?" Ian waited for him to come closer before asking. If she was extremely busy in the military department, Xiao Ju was even busier than her. "I know you haven't gone back yet, so I came to pick you up," he said. Ian hurriedly grabbed his arm. With one hand holding the walking stick, she hopped forward on one leg. She didn't think much of it. Her leg injury was actually much better, but she didn't know what Lin Shuanghe had said to Xiao Ju to exaggerate. In short, Ian felt that her current life was like a cripple. She took 2 steps forward. Xiao Ju suddenly stopped. Ian asked, "What's wrong?" His gaze fell on Ian's walking stick. After thinking for a while, he walked in front of Ian and squatted down slightly. "Come on up. You want to carry me on your back?" Ian asked. "Hurry up. That's not good." Ian hesitated for a while. "This is the military department. I have to work here every day. If someone sees this, it will damage my reputation. Everyone knows how brave and invincible I was in Jiuquan. If they look back, they will see that I even need someone to carry me. Wouldn't that be embarrassing? Are you coming up or not?" Ian said, "Yes, yes, yes." She pounced forward and wrapped her arms around Xiao Ju's neck. Xiao Ju easily carried her on his back. Xiao Ju continued to carry her outside. Ian whispered in his ear, "Even if you don't care about my reputation, what about yours? Won't others say that although De Wei's commander Jade Face looks impressive, he is actually a henpecked husband at home?" "Lady He," Xiao Ju's voice was very calm. "You don't have to speak when you don't want to." Ian said, "Are you admitting that you are a henpecked husband?" At times like this, Xiao Ju was usually too lazy to bother with her. The wind blew in the night. It was very cold as they walked on the road. However, his back was warm and broad, as if it could support the entire future. Ian thought that Xiao Ju was indeed better than He Yinsheng. If He Yinsheng had carried her for such a long distance, he would have scolded her and complained that she was heavy. "Military Governor Xiao," Ian's voice was soft. Her warm breath blew on his neck, tickling him. "Is this your first time carrying a girl?" Xiao Ju's voice was very cold. Are you a girl? No one saw that the corners of his mouth were slightly curved, and his eyes were as moving as water. Am I not a girl? Yin asked doubtfully. Then, do you like a man? Xiao Ju did not say anything. Perhaps it was because Yin had been with him for a long time, but his ability to annoy people had grown day by day. It was run by Wei Xuanzhang's wife, Wei Furan, and Zhao Kong, Emperor agreed. Now, that there was a female general like Marquis Wuan in the imperial court in the next few years, when young Su Tang nurtured a group of talented and ambitious girls, who knows if there would be female officials. Although it was slow, it was getting better little by little. Yixing also helped in young Su Tang. After Wei Xuanzhang's death, Yixing accompanied Wei Furan every day and built a deep relationship with Wei Furan. Wei Furan accepted her as her goddaughter. She was a teacher teaching the zither in young Su Tang. Every day, she was with young girls and became more cheerful and open-minded. She was no longer as obsessed with the past as before. He and also often went to see her. He heard that there was a young teacher teaching abacus in young Su Tang who secretly admired Yixing very much. He ordered people to investigate the background of that teacher. He was a righteous person. However, Yixing had to ask herself what she thought. There was still a long way to go, so there was no hurry. After Xiao Yao ate the peach, she fell asleep on Xiao Ju's body. Ian asked in a low voice, "Are you tired? Do you want me to hold you for a while?" Xiao Ju shook her head. "I'm not tired." Ian looked at Xiao Yao, who was hanging on his body, and sighed in his heart. As expected of her, she could eat and sleep and was especially easy to take care of. She lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked outside. Outside, at the end of the river, the banks were green and the sun was warm. As she looked, she felt a wave of laziness. She leaned on Xiao Ju's shoulder and unknowingly fell asleep like the little girl in Xiao Ju's arms. 7 years later, Jiang City did not seem to have changed much compared to 7 years ago. At the city gate, Cui Yuji, who had received the news, rushed over early in the morning. When Yin and the others got off the carriage, the first thing they saw was Cui Yuji and his 4 concubines. Cui Yuji still looked the same. He was round and chubby, simple and honest, but he was a little older. Eldest concubine and 4th concubine each held a child in their arms. These were Cui Yuji's son and daughter, Cui Yin and Cui Yingying, who were born to eldest concubine and 4th concubine respectively. 2nd concubine was still as charming and beautiful as before. 3rd concubine coughed weakly every time she took a few steps. There were not many changes either. Ian walked in front of them and pinched Cui Yingying's cheeks. Her cheeks were soft and comparable to Xiao Yao's. He smiled and said, "Lord Cui, this is Yin and Yingying," Cui Yuji said proudly. "How is it?" "Everyone says that the two of them look more and more like military Governor Xiao." "I think they do." There were countless beautiful girls in Wei's capital, but she was probably the only one who was beautiful and had such a heroic spirit. When she put on her red warrior outfit, smiled as she pulled out the long sword at her waist. She was either giving orders to the soldiers or instructing the soldiers and horses. The young people on the field were all stunned by her brilliance. Lin Shuanghe came to see Xiao Ju twice, and both times he felt the crisis for Xiao Ju. He only knew that when Xiao Ju was in the Liangzhou Guards, she was a woman dressed as a man, and the brothers in the barracks didn't know her identity. Now she was dressed as a woman and mingled with these young men every day. These young men who were as passionate as fire almost didn't hide their love for her. Ian didn't feel it. In her eyes, these young men were no different from Wang Ba and the others in the past. They were all good men, good brothers. After the Battle of Yudo, half of the brothers in the Liang province guards left. The remaining few had been tempered by the battlefield and were now very outstanding. Even the Liang province guards, they were outstanding. Jiang Jiao's dojo became famous because of Jiang Jiao. Dojo Master Jiang was proud of Jiang Jiao. Most of Wang Ba's money was sent back to the bandit stronghold. The bandit stronghold he used to live in was no longer a bandit, and the fish pond he dug was quite profitable. It was said that the bandit stronghold often adopted orphans that no one wanted. Wang Ba would occasionally visit the stronghold. His temper was much better now, and even children dared to get close to him. Xiaomai grew the fastest after Shi Tu left. In the past, with Shi Tu's protection, he was still a playful young man who only thought about delicious food. Now, he was much more mature. His archery skills improved by leaps and bounds, and he was now even more accurate than Shi Tu. He was also not as greedy as before. When he talked to He Yin, he was much quieter and not as cheerful as before. He Yin felt a sense of loss, but people had to grow up. Fate pushed people onto their own paths. Some people would never change, and some people would slowly grow up. Time was like the wind. It was impossible to stop them. She flipped over and dismounted from her horse. Just now, she had demonstrated that the arrow in her hand had hit the bullseye. It was beautiful and dazzling. The young man who picked up the arrow looked at her. His eyes were filled with admiration. He said half shyly and half excitedly, "General, you're amazing. You flatter me." He Yin patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "You should practice more. It's the same for you." The young man looked at her, took 2 steps forward, and called out, "General." He Yin turned around and asked, "What's the matter?" I'm not good at archery. Can you give me some pointers?" He didn't dare to look into He Yan's eyes. He blushed and said impatiently, "Anyway, if I marry her, I will treat her well for the rest of my life." He Yin was relieved. Although He Sui didn't have an official position, He Yunsheng had a sister and brother-in-law who were generals. Although He Yunsheng was young, he was already outstanding in his career. His future was immeasurable. Moreover, Song Tao Tao liked him, so the Song family was happy to see this marriage. Without much effort, the marriage was settled. He Yin originally thought that He Yunsheng had offended Song Tao Tao. If he suddenly proposed marriage, he might be chased out by Song Tao Tao. He didn't expect that He Yunsheng, who usually didn't talk much, was quite good at coaxing girls. Not long after, He Yin saw Song Tao Tao happily go to the He family to deliver food to He Yunsheng. After the marriage was settled, the ceremony went very quickly. Other than the He family and the Song family, the happiest person was actually Chung Li Su. He Yin sometimes thought that Chung Li Su didn't look like He Yunsheng was marrying a wife, but more like he was marrying a wife. He often came to the He family to help. He was probably the first person in the capital to have a fiancé like this. He Yin took the opportunity to ask him, "Why are you so happy that Tao Tao is getting married? Are you really not unhappy at all?" "Why would I be unhappy?" Chung Li Su smiled as if he had picked up silver. "That's true. Miss Song, now that she has been taken by Uncle He, I am free. Otherwise, I would have to worry every day that my family would pick this marriage back up again. This is called, it's better to die than to die." He was quite proud. Ian thought about it. He was afraid that Chung Li Su would regret it in the future and accidentally make his nephew and younger brother into enemies. He asked, "You really don't like Tao Tao at all?" "I don't like her." Chung Li Su smiled and said, "Annie, I know you and Uncle think I am unreliable, but I can still distinguish between what I like and what I don't like. Song Tao Tao and I are not the same kind of people. The girl I like, of course, has to be like me, able to discover the good in me." When Song Tao Tao saw me, she felt that I was not making progress. "Trash young master, tell me, can I be your husband?" Even friends need to know the occasion. Ian saw that his words were clear and logical and thought that it was fine. Young people had their own thoughts. Since Chung Li Su really didn't have any feelings for Song Tao Tao, then things had come to this point. It could be considered a kind of perfect ending. She began to help He Yunsheng with the marriage again. On the day of He Yunsheng's wedding, He Yin was very sad. He Yunsheng was the one getting married. She looked like an old mother who was sending her daughter off to get married. Tears appeared in her eyes. He Sui's father was not as emotional as He Yin. He Xining stood by He Yan's side and looked at her expression. Chapter 271. The first time Xia Qingxiu met Yin, he was at the spring banquet with his cousin. Although it was called a spring banquet, it was actually just an opportunity for the noble young masters and young ladies of the right age to see each other. At that time, Xia Qingxiu was only 16 years old. Although there were young ladies of this age in the capital who were already married, Xia Qingxiu doted on his daughter and did not intend to marry Xia Qingxiu off so early. Therefore, Xia Qingxiu only came out to have fun with his cousin. It was the spring of April, and the grass was long and the orioles were flying. The tender grass by the Sisui River was furry. Xia Qingxiu followed his cousin Xia Qianqian out of the carriage. There were already young ladies he knew who were flying kites. Seeing this, Xia Qianqian immediately asked the maidservant to take out the prepared kites and walk towards her friend. Xia Qianqian was 18 years old this year. Among the group of young ladies, her appearance was especially outstanding. She was exceptionally sweet and beautiful. She also understood the strength of her appearance very well. She wore a scarlet tulle embroidered narrow collar dress that outlined her slim figure. In the crowd, she could be seen at a glance. Her family background was also the most superior among this group of young ladies. In just a moment, she was surrounded by people and praised. At that time, Xia Qingxiu was still a 16-year-old girl. At most, she could only be considered delicate and pretty, not to mention compared to her cousin Xia Qianqian. Xia Qingxiu was usually called a bookworm, and Xia Qingxiu was secretly called a little bookworm. She scrupulously followed etiquette. Among her peers or sisters, she seemed a little dull and taciturn, which was not likable enough. The relationship between Xia Qianqian and Xia Qingxiu could not be considered close. They were just ordinary cousins. However, with Xia Qingxiu, this dull and boring bookworm, by her side, it made Xia Qianqian look delicate, light, and intelligent. Xia Qingxiu did not think much of it. Seeing that his cousin and her friend were talking animatedly, he picked up a book and sat at the side to read. Xia Qianqian couldn't be bothered with her. After a while, everyone began to set up a long table beside the Sisui shoreline. On the long table were the snacks that the young ladies had brought out from the residence. They could eat here at noon. After an unknown period of time, Xia Qingxiu heard the young ladies beside him talking about which brand's new rouge color was beautiful. Now, they were talking about young Master Yin will also come today. The young master of the Yin family referred to the current young master of the left and right vanguard's commander's residence, Yin Nongguang. He was only 18 years old this year. In fact, before this, the young ladies had already released kites for a while. However, these young ladies from rich families were physically weak. After releasing them for a while, they had to sit down and rest. The rest was left to the servants. Xia Qianqian stood up and walked to the maid who was placing her 100 butterfly painting. She said, "Let me do it." The young ladies sitting at the long table immediately laughed. Someone whispered, "Looks like Qian likes it." Xia Qingxiu was a little puzzled when she heard that, but she didn't say anything. She wasn't a talkative person to begin with. She only saw Xia Qian pulling the kite's string and walking towards the river. Then she saw that the two kites in the sky were getting closer and closer. She hesitated whether she should open her mouth to remind her. In the next moment, she heard her cousin exclaim, "Aya!" The string of the 100 butterfly painting and the Black King Kong were entangled together. They collided into a ball and fell towards the forest. The noble ladies beside her laughed even louder. They discussed in low voices, "Qian, good method." Xia Qian was still holding the kite string in her hand. Her expression was flustered, but there was a smug joy in her eyes. She was very confident in her appearance. If she wanted to capture the heart of youth, it shouldn't be a difficult task. Her rouge today was very beautiful, and her dress was also very beautiful. She turned around and glanced at the silver-robed youth who was frowning as he stared at the entangled kite. She turned around and ran into the forest where the kite fell. At the same time, Xia Chengxiu, who was sitting at the side, put down the book in her hand and stood up. The noble lady beside her asked, "Miss Chengxiu, what are you doing?" "Sister's kite fell. I'm going to help," Xia Chengxiu replied. "Why are you helping?" The noble lady who spoke covered her mouth and laughed. She looked at her as if she was looking at a fool, and there was a complicated sourness in her eyes. "Qian doesn't need your help now." Xia Chengxiu pursed her lips. In the end, she was worried about Xia Qian being alone, so she lifted her skirt and ran over. The noble ladies called her a few times, but when they saw that she ignored them, they let it go. The forest where the kite fell was not far from the river, but there were bushes growing inside. When a girl walked inside, she had to be careful of the thorny branches and leaves cutting the corner of her skirt. Xia Qingxiu struggled to push aside the bushes and saw a corner of his cousin's scarlet dress not far away. His heart relaxed, and he was about to walk over when he suddenly heard Xia Qian say, "Young Master Yin." Xia Qingxiu paused. Only then did he see someone standing in front of Xia Qian. It was the main character of today's meeting, young Master Yin. Xia Qian's voice was gentle and sweet, with a hint of panic and apology. After being pushed like this, he took a few steps back. His hand accidentally brushed against a thorny branch, and in an instant, a red mark appeared on the back of his hand. Such a red mark on his fair skin looked very dazzling. And he was also stunned. He did not expect these delicate young ladies to be so fragile. They could get hurt just by touching them. He was a little annoyed, but he could not sit back and do nothing. He took a step forward to check on her injury, but he did not expect Xia Qingxiu to immediately take a step back. "You're injured," Yin said. "I know." Xia Qingxiu's expression was calm, as if she did not care about the wound on the back of her hand. Her tone was calm. But men and women should not touch each other. And he was a little puzzled. The girl in front of him was far less beautiful than Xia Qian. The dress she was wearing was light yellow, and she did not wear any makeup. She looked like she was still at the age where she did not know about love. How could it be not touching each other? He said, "This little girl is young, but she's quite old-fashioned." Xia Qingxiu just turned sideways to avoid him. "I'm broad-minded. I won't argue with young Master Yin about the fact that you deliberately pushed me." Yin was stunned. After Xia Qingxiu said this, he turned around and left. Yin touched his chin. This guy was avenging her cousin. This was the first time he was scolded by a woman like this. She looked gentle and refined, and it seemed that she was not a person who would suffer losses. After Xia Chengxiu left the forest, the noble ladies at the long banquet had already dispersed in twos and threes. Xia Qian was probably unhappy with Yin He, so she cried and took the carriage to go back. Xia Qingxiu also had to hurriedly follow. As a result, when Yin He came out, the group of noble ladies had already boarded the carriage. There was a book lying in the grass beside the long banquet. Yin He remembered that when he came, only Xia Qingxiu was sitting here reading a book. This book was probably hers, but she left in a hurry and forgot about it. He bent down and picked it up. He opened it and saw that it was a travel book. There was also someone's note on it. The handwriting was extremely beautiful and elegant. It reminded him of the girl who quietly scolded him in the forest just now. And he pursed his lips and said in a low voice, "Bookworm." However, for some reason, he put the travel book into his arms. This meeting with Xia Qianqian naturally ended without any results. Xia Qianqian's parents even treated Commander Yin coldly for a period of time. Commander Yin turned around and scolded Yin He, but Yin He himself did not think much of it. However, this marriage did not continue. Time passed quickly, and another year passed. Xia Qingxiu was 17 years old. Lord Xia was thinking that he should start looking for suitable young talents in Shuo capital for Xia Qingxiu. When Yin He returned to the residence, he heard his mother discussing with his aunt about matchmaking his cousin to Xia Qingxiu. Xia Qingxiu. Yin He stopped walking into the house and turned his head to ask, "Is it the young lady of the Imperial College's Chancellor's residence?" "How do you know?" Mother Yin asked in confusion. "Don't you hate to remember the names of these young ladies?" And he did not answer his mother's question. He only frowned and asked, "Cousin is 2 years older than me. Miss Xia is still young, right? In terms of age, am I not more suitable?" Commander Yin scolded him. "Miss Xia is from a scholarly family and is knowledgeable. Didn't you say that you hate people who play with words the most? Don't you hate bookworms the most? Are you willing to matchmake you?" And he did not say anything. He returned to his room and stared at the pond outside the window for half a day. He took out a book from the bottom of the desk drawer. It was a travel book. In the middle of the night, when the dogs in the Yin residence were asleep, Yin He put on his outer clothes and knocked on the door of his parents' bedroom. "Yin Nangguang, you scared people to death in the middle of the night. What do you want?" Commander Yin was furious. Yin He said, "I'm willing." After that, it was a long day of chasing. Yin He tried his best to please the beauty. Master Xia was very fierce and old-fashioned. Every time Yin He saw him, he was a little scared. Xia Qingxiu was even scarier than Master Xia. He was clearly a bookworm who did not have the strength to trust a chicken. However, every time he looked at him with his calm eyes, Yin He did not know what to do. Commander Yin scolded him at home. "You're usually like a gamecock. Why don't you know how to chase a girl properly? Why doesn't she like you? Can't you think about it?" And he could not think of it. He felt that he was quite good. He was handsome, agile, and had a good family background. He was one of the top young talents in the Shuo capital. Why didn't Xia Qingxiu like him? It must be because that bookworm did not know how to appreciate men. He was blind. However, he did not dare to say this in front of Xia Qingxiu. Seeing that her son had a lot on his mind, Madame Yin felt gratified and helpless. She could only beat around the bush. "Since you like her, you should treat her better. Take care of her more. Eventually, Miss Xia will see the good in you." And he felt that his mother's words made sense. However, he did not know how to treat someone well. The jewelry and clothes he gave were all returned. The love poem he wrote was returned to his servant the next day. Sometimes he felt annoyed. When he first met Xia Qingxiu, he should not have been so rude and frivolous. It would have been better than trying his best to remedy the situation, but he still felt that the results were not good. As a proud son of heaven, he finally felt the anxiety of love and could not sleep.